across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome to the show. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, watching on YouTube, all the other ways of listening and watching, great to have your company with you all the way till 1 o'clock. If you miss anything from the show, you missed anything from the show earlier this week, do have a look at our YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to discuss the day that the small boats crisis became the huge, the sodding enormous boats crisis, as a record 230 illegal migrants arrived yesterday on a 49-foot mega-dinghy. Andy Burnham has also told the Justice Secretary to find a way to keep PC Andrew Harper's killers behind bars. He is said to be increasingly confident that he can keep him behind bars. I want the two killers behind bars. I mean, of course you can. You could just not release anybody who's behind bars for manslaughter early from their sentences. It's really that simple, Prime Minister. If only you had the power to do that. Oh, yeah, you do, even when you're on holiday, or even when you're on a little listening tour around Britain. Plus, we're going to be talking about the Prime Minister's plans announced today to clean up our high streets. Basically say that, you know, the high streets really changed. They want to make it more difficult to have new vape and gambling shops to get approval. Yeah, I think we'd all approve of that, but maybe we could make it possible for people to park near their high streets or on their high streets. Maybe that might make it a bit easier for people to use them, eh? Plus, we're going to be talking about how that early release plan from prison may well be a little bit even more scuppered than it already is by the fact that probation officers are expected to vote a result of an indicative vote today. There'll have to be another vote, but a vote today expecting to be in favour of industrial action. That industrial action will be starting, just around the time that we're going to be releasing a load of very violent, dangerous people and thieves onto our streets who basically won't be getting supervision. I think it all sounds like a great plan. I don't know about you, but I think everything is absolutely on board. Anyway, we're going to be talking about all of that. You, as always, are welcome to get in touch about anything and everything that you want to talk about. But in particular, now, we talked about this on the show yesterday. We had a few calls as well on this issue when we saw the news that a 49-foot mega-dinghy carrying 230 illegal migrants had crossed the channel yesterday. We now know that's going to cost taxpayers over the lifetime of these people some £25 million. It wasn't until the afternoon that the pictures emerged, and if you are watching on YouTube right now, you'll be able to see the pictures of this. This thing is sodding huge. I mean, it's absolutely huge and piled full of people. Mostly young men, it has to be said. There were some women and children, of course, there always are a few, but it's mostly young, as we say, fighting-age men, or as the woke like to say, working-age men. Well, yes, you know what we're really short of? People working illegally in this country, riding Ubers on the pavement, delivering food to people who frankly should get out more. That's definitely the shortage we're looking at. I want to know your reaction to that boat arrival, because everyone's now going, oh, we need to pay attention. Even some of the newspapers that don't really seem to think that these boat migrants are a problem. They're certainly not illegal migrants. These are desperate people fleeing France, don't you know? But even they now perhaps are waking up to maybe this might be a problem. I want to know your reaction. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate, as you know. And altogether now, text cost £1, standard network rate message. He never does join in on that. Tom Slater is here, editor of Spiked Online, as always, now on a Tuesday. A very, very good morning to you. There is so much to talk about. You know, those quiet August, silly seasons, we don't seem to get much of those these days. But some of the headlines, you know, the day the small boats crisis became a big boats crisis, that image of that huge mega-dinghy is extraordinary. I mean, we had the record of 165 arrivals last month, 230 dwarfing it. We're told they'd paid some £2,000 each to come on the boat, which is strange because actually we've been telling that actually some of the prices have been going down to as little as 300, 500. You know, I say the market works, Tom. The market works. What do you make of the fact that we've got these? What does it tell us about the migrants, the illegal traffickers, the French failure to stop them, and indeed the British failure to stop the the demand for coming to our shores.
I mean, it's a symbol of such a catastrophic failure. I mean, the size of that vessel is more capacity than an EasyJet flight. It's about 10 foot longer than a double-decker bus.
I mean, when it comes to Ryanair, at least they probably don't charge extra for baggage.
That's true, exactly. So, you know, they store it
At least they're not.
under
At least
the
they're not
person in
going. Yeah,
front
at
of
least
you.
they're not taking your cabin bag. People smugglers aren't taking your cabin bag and going, "No, it's 1 centimetre over. You can't take that on. You have to check. You have to pay £5,000 to put it in the hold."
Exactly.
That is how they talk.
Say what you will about the people smugglers. On that front, if nothing else, their customer service is probably slightly
Thank you very
better.
much. All credit to them.
So, you know, maybe the fact that they're making, what, £500,000 profit on one of these boats is staggering, but this is what we've come to expect. Of course, we all know that, broadly speaking, the numbers are down on last year by about 42%.
What do you put that down to?
Well, the thing is that, of course, there will be measures that the government have taken which have worked around the edges. I mean, the thing about smashing the gangs was it was never going to completely solve the problem, but if you lock up enough Kurdish people smugglers, if you sign an agreement with Kurdistan to try and stop it at source, that's going to affect things.
And there has been a limit on the number of small boats. I mean, basically, they tried to stem the number of these boats being sort of basically made in, well, not made in China, but sent from China. I think they go via Germany often, and then and yet somehow the mega-dinghy slips through.
Well, this is it. I mean, in a sense, the mega-dinghy and also the fact that the routes that they're taking are shifting kind of further and further up the coast is a sign that some of the measures are having an effect.
Yes.
The problem is it was only ever going to have a certain level of effect if you don't remove the incentives for the business model, if you create a situation where as soon as someone lands, it's pretty clear that they're going to be able to stay, or at least stay long enough to just disappear and melt into the population, then the trade is going to continue. So yes, this is a catastrophic failure. It shows that the deal with France is worth the paper that it's written on. It shows that smashing the gangs was ultimately never going to get on top of this. And I just think Burnham's got nowhere to hide, particularly during the summer period when, as the weather continues to be pretty good, you're going to see more and more crossings like this. And Burnham can try and pretend that this isn't a priority for the country, but it clearly is.
Well, and it was fascinating. Makerfield by-election. I wasn't running for Prime Minister. No, I was just organising, you know, a new number 10 North. But I wasn't running for Prime Minister. No. I'm just running to be the MP for Makerfield. He never mentioned immigration once. He did touch on the issue of illegal migrants, it was asylum seekers, as you would call them, being in their houses of multiple occupancy in Makerfield. That's something that had been raised on the doorsteps. But he didn't tackle the actual other issues. Didn't mention it at all this first week or so, 2 weeks. And then the day before he went on a Holes a week ago, he went down to Dover and suddenly he was talking about this issue. But very much in a, gosh, look, apparently there's an issue. Who knew? No one told me about it. We should do something about this. And Labour have generally tried to always just try and pretend it's not really an issue because they've got an awful lot of Labour backbenchers, an awful lot of their voters and their membership and their supporters who basically, they don't think these people are illegal migrants. They are still holding on to the absolute lie that these people are desperate and are fleeing persecution and not economic migrants, and that we have a duty of care to these people, and that it's not a massive damaging impact on our country, not just economically but culturally, criminally, and in every other way. It is extraordinary. He's just in that sort of, I want to please everybody, and I know the voters don't like this, but my party aren't bothered by it, and they don't want me to think I'm right-wing. The reason why his party don't like Shabana Mahmood is because she was sort of vaguely doing something to... I mean, I don't give her credit, a lot of people do, about trying to do something about this issue. I don't think he's going to have a choice about it, though, because this isn't an issue just for, you know, the far right, as he seems to think, as a lot of Labour think. This is an issue for very ordinary people living in ordinary homes, many of whom have just voted Labour all their lives, but are going, are you kidding me?
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. I've thought for a long time that if the Labour Party could drop its bizarre attachment to illegal migration, if it could get its head around...
Not just legal migrant, but illegal migration.
If it could get its head around that, you know, if you've got people who all they have to do is pay a people smuggler tens of thousands of pounds in some instances to get all the way from their country of origin across the Mediterranean into France and then across the Channel, that in and of itself, maybe, just maybe, amongst those people will be those who aren't who they say they are, might be those with ill intent, might be those who are fleeing charges in other countries, might be terrorists who have been sent by states like Iran to go and disrupt our own country. Just maybe, therefore it's a problem, you should get on top of it, and whoever enters the country by whatever number should just be decided by the government of the day and something that people can have genuine democratic scrutiny over. If they could just absorb that idea, they would be doing a lot better than they currently are.
Yeah, I know, this is the extraordinary thing. And again, people talk about this Burnham bounce, and I'm looking at it. I mean, he's not done anything. He's not said anything of any use. He says things, but he doesn't even say anything very strong. I mean, again, Labour, like under Keir Starmer, are under some bizarre illusion that saying something counts as achievement. Whenever look, Keir Starmer's achievements, they would say, and a lot of them would be, he announced, I can announce a million things. I can announce I'm a billionaire. I can announce I'm a size 10. I don't want to be a billionaire. But I mean, doesn't make it true.
Yeah. No, and this is the problem, is that they are obsessed with comms, with communications. Andy Burnham is much worse in some respects than Keir Starmer is. If you have a catchy message, if you can get it out across social media, if you've got a good slogan, that's as good as done. But it's not.
But
people can see it now.
The day he came into Downing Street, I'm going to abolish. I'm basically going to abolish homelessness. No, you're not.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not. And saying it doesn't make it happen. My theory about this is that actually an awful lot of the people who, that sort of Labour lanyard class, as they're known, that actually they're all in jobs where you just say things or write things and that makes it happen. So they all go to these rather pointless meetings or, conferences, or they do their Zoom meetings and people say things and they write things. And then that's it. That's their job done. None of them do a job where it actually involves doing stuff. The actual building things, achieving things. Whether it's a supermarket, whether you're the head of logistics for the whole of Tesco or you're the shelf stacker, somebody who actually has to make that move from there to there on a grand scale or on a tiny scale, whether you're working in a care home, the sort of doctor or whatever, the sort of jobs where you actually have to physically do something rather than just say it and then it's true.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to that. And it's also this sort of technocrat's brain where they think that if they pull the right levers, if they have enough meetings and if they draw up some kind of communique with France or whoever it is, then everything will just sort itself out. When the facts on the ground are the facts on the ground, there is this tremendous pull factor into this country for illegal migration because of the benefit system, because of the soft touch, because of the inability to deport people. Also, France...
No, it's not inability. We are able to deport people tomorrow if we want to. It's the unwillingness, because the refusal to accept that we need to get out of the ECHR, we need to get out of, the...
Of course, but, and whilst under the ECHR, it just becomes incredibly difficult, not least because you've got civil servants who feel like they can't push these things through. 6 months' notice, we're out, thanks very much. So all of these things put together, and it ends up with a chronic problem. This is not something that is going to be tackled because you arrest enough people smugglers. Also, France, of course, they don't want the Calais jungle to go on forever. They don't want all of those towns on the north coast of their country to be menaced by this problem forever and ever more. But at the same time, when those boats set off, they're no longer their problem. So you have to deal with that as well. But again, it's sort of focus on the idea if you just say things rather than do things.
Safe and legal routes is the solution, we keep being told. Something Andy Burnham has said as well. You can have loads of safe and legal routes. The men on that mega-dinghy ain't going to be approved on the safe and legal routes because they're economic migrants.
Yeah.
They're not the most downtrodden. And again, if you genuinely think they are really, really desperate, it's interesting, they're really, really desperate, but they left their wives and kids and mums behind. Sorry, it's embarrassing.
We have safe and legal routes.
Well, no, actually, in a lot of the countries we don't.
And of course, Ukraine scheme, safe and legal routes, something that there is overwhelming support for in the country and is primarily, women and children. You've got something like the Hong Kong scheme, of course, when the
but these are for people we want.
There. But this is the thing.
No, that's the difference. These are for people we want.
But the difference, and I think this is something that we're going to end up moving towards, is that it's going to be much more case by case. It's going to be something one would hope that it's just decided upon in Parliament, something that can command popular support. This idea of a kind of automatic right that can be invoked even by someone who has questionable status as an asylum seeker, I think is going to move on.
The height of the Syrian crisis in 2015, when we had these awful images and that little child who was dead on a beach, whose body, by the way, had been moved to make it more photogenic. I mean, that genuinely sick people behind this. There were loads of children, sadly, being killed by the Assad regime and while they were fleeing. But we didn't care about those because we hadn't seen a picture of them. We only care about the ones we've seen a picture of so we can emote about it. And everybody was, the media and the political classes were demanding that we offered huge numbers of asylum places to people fleeing Syria. And David Cameron, Prime Minister at the time, offered 20,000 places, 5,000 a year over 4 years, only coming from the refugee camps where people have been fully assessed. He was absolutely slagged off in the media, slagged off in the Commons, absolute criticism. And when the public were polled on it, the majority of the public said they wanted either fewer or that was about right. And if something like 5 or 10%, or, you know, Labour, Lib Dem, Green voters all went, oh no, we'd love to have more. The British public don't want any more of these people, thank you very much. They don't, because they know what the net impact is. And the impact is not on the lanyard classes, it's on ordinary British voters. Let's also talk about the impact on voters from releasing hundreds and hundreds of convicted killers. Andy Burnham has, I mean, he's exposed himself extraordinarily on this issue when it comes to early release. First of all, it was sort of, oh, early release is happening. Yeah, mate, we all knew that was going to happen in September. Oh, well, we'll have to have a review of that, he says, when he becomes Prime Minister. So he has a review, and then he decides he's going to, because of an outcry from grooming gang and rape victims, there's going to be a ban on rapists and child sex attackers, or not all of them, most of them, but the groomers and the most supposed serious affairs. I would have thought all people who've attacked children in some way, sexually or criminally, should be excluded. But there we are. They would be banned from that early release scheme, but not people who'd committed manslaughter, because, well, you know, our prisons are overcrowding. Our prisons are overcrowded. I mean, something like 2/3 of people behind bars are not there for a violent offence or a sex offence, but for some reason he thinks we should release those who are eligible for early release who are convicted killers. Not murderers, they're not allowed, but manslaughter, the verdicts, they are allowed out. There are 950 of them behind bars. Some few hundred could be released in the next few years. That would include PC Andrew Harper's killers, 2 of them. There's been a massive petition. I think it's 900,000 people have now signed that petition to say that they shouldn't be released. Prime Minister said he'll stop their release. Then we're told by the Ministry of Justice and Number 10, no, he can't do that. You can't just have an exception for these 2 people, or indeed killers of emergency workers. Now he's saying, after yesterday, Number 10 basically said they couldn't stop it. Now he's saying today he's increasingly confident that work to increase the space in the prison system will allow us to reduce the number of people released early. Angela Rayner, the Housing Secretary, did an interview with the BBC this morning, said the government's looking at freeing other prison spaces to prevent violent offenders being released early, deporting foreign prisoners, female offenders, and indefinite sentences handed out in previous decades. So all the stuff we've been talking about for the last, months? And now they're finally going to start looking at it, which is extraordinary. The Ministry of Justice and Number 10 hadn't already looked at it. But, I mean, this is so easy. This is so easy to do. And yet there seems to be the obsession. We need to release these few hundred convicted killers to free up prison space so we can put some other people behind bars. I mean, are they insane?
I think
the only answer.
Is it incompetence? Is it a lack of attention to what the plan actually constitutes? Because it's not as if I think Andy Burnham wakes up in the morning thinking, you know, it would be great if we released more people who are locked up for manslaughter. Of course not. But at the same time, despite the fact that it's clear that other avenues weren't explored, whether it's female prisoners, whether it's foreign national offenders, what have you, even some people have been pointing out there are different categories of manslaughter. If you wanted to kind of chop these numbers up in such a way to make sure that the killers of PC Harper were not among them. You could do that by because it's levelled by intent. So if you could hive that off, it's a relatively small number of people. It would include them. The issue is over. But I think they just walked into this media firestorm.
And I think listening to the civil servants who went, "Oh, what's we're going to do?" By the way, an entire class of people who don't think people should be in prison anyway.
There's that, but there's also a kind of sense of here's the plan that we have off the shelf. It's ready to go. You know, he's busy.
But Andy Burnham clearly hadn't thought about any of this. So even when this is in the news in 2024, and he was Mayor of Manchester, didn't think about it. None of this had crossed it. Not only didn't cross his desk, it didn't cross his mind.
This is Andy Burnham in a nutshell, in a way, is that he's not known for being a details man particularly. He's also known as being a bit of a people pleaser if you read a lot of the reports internally. So I think what we've seen here is he hasn't really been across it. He clearly hasn't thought about it. He's inherited this policy. And now, in the face of public backlash, he's thinking, oh, this makes me look bad, I should try and change tack, I feel terrible for the family, what have you. It's kind of him summed up, and I think we'll see more cases like this
but
going
also,
forward.
same with this, and with the decision to not to release the rapists and others. It's all in response to interviews in the media.
Exactly.
This is reaction, reacting reactive government rather than decisive leadership.
Yeah.
You know, and the idea that you have to release a few hundred killers to free it to sort out your prison system early. I mean, it's absurd. It's a nonsense, and frankly, it's an insult to our intelligence. It really is. There are enough people who are behind bars who, I mean, including more people who are behind bars currently serving under 1 year's sentences. Given that you no longer will get sent to prison if you get sentenced to under 1 year, it would make more sense to release those people who, by definition, will not have committed as serious offences, or I don't know, killing a police officer. I mean, but I have to say, I really object to the idea that it should be just the killers of P.C. Harper who should not be released. I really don't think the killers of anybody should be released early.
Yeah.
It's bad enough they would normally be released after 2/3 of their sentence, half their sentence. Again, once again, our sentencing is a lie, and we need to remember that. We've also got the prospect of a probation officers strike. We've already got a massive shortage of probation officers. They're massively overworked. If they go on strike, as it looks very likely they will by the end of the year, and around the time we are releasing thousands more dangerous criminals onto the streets, we've already had the chief watchdog for probation yesterday warning that we are seeing a huge number of recalls to prison, something like a 30% reoffending rate, some 50,000 people behind bars have been brought back behind bars. We've got a population of 85,000 behind bars. 50,000 in the last years have been brought back, recalled after early release because they commit more crimes. One of the purposes of prison is that people might not, they might not be deterred by prison. They might not be rehabilitated, very unlikely in the circumstances behind bars these days. They might not even care about the punishment. But the one thing it does do is it keeps them off the sodding streets for a little bit and gives everyone else a respite, particularly if it's domestic abusers or women being sexually assaulted or victims of burglary and bag theft and phone theft. But those people go back out and guess what they do? They commit more crime and then they go back in again. I mean, it's a joke. I mean, it's just a joke. It's just not a very funny joke.
Yes, and the probation system, like the prison system, like the criminal justice system, more broadly, is on its knees. It has been for a long time. There's been chronic underinvestment during the time the Tories are in power. They added, 400, 500 prison spaces net over a period in which clearly more investment was needed to be made. And so you end up with a series of difficult choices. That being said, the choices they're making are still demented. You could, even if we weren't having a conversation about let's stand up temporary prison capacity in the way that Reform have been talking about, even if there's not a big conversation about, well, let's take that knocking on for 10,000 who are in jail in England and Wales who are foreign nationals and clearly have rescinded, shall we say, or surrendered their right to be here. Even if you don't want to get into that, there are clearly other choices that could be made. But I think, as much as anything else, it's an issue that, unfortunately, a lot of politicians don't care sufficiently about in order to deal with it sensibly until it blows up in their face.
Absolutely. Let's also talk about Nigel Farage. He gave a press conference yesterday, and one of the questions he was asked about was about his personal security. I want to play a little clip of what he had to say because reports are now, and again, it was very difficult. We talked about it on the show yesterday, but obviously we have to be very careful because one thing we absolutely don't want to do is prejudice any future trial. We certainly don't want to be in contempt of court. And so there are a lot of people, by the way, online who've been publishing things going, oh, why isn't the mainstream media talking about this more openly? Because we're not legally allowed to. I'm sorry for obeying the law. I know, silly, huh? Silly. But some of us are a bit more responsible. We want to make sure that if anything does happen in relation to any charges brought, that there will be a fair trial. Because most of us here in the mainstream media, do we count as mainstream? I don't know if we do care about that stuff. But the Telegraph has reported today that police are investigating whether the man charged with murdering Anne Widdecombe was also responsible for firebombing Nigel Farage's home. Counter-terrorism police are pursuing a new line of inquiry about the attack on the Reform UK leader's house, in which an incendiary device was pushed through his letterbox, the Telegraph is reporting. And officers are investigating whether Joshua Kerry, 28 years old, who's the man who's been arrested and charged over Miss Widdecombe's murder last month, could have been responsible for that attack. That is what is being reported in a national newspaper today. Here's what Nigel Farage had to say yesterday in his press conference.
Of course, most of the media organisations in this room called me a liar. Remember that vividly. Half of you in the room called me a liar. But the truth is, there was an investigation into this, and clearly, counter-terrorism made some mistakes, which is why they've referred themselves to the Independent Office of Police Complaints. I understand this is a completely unprecedented move. And yes, this is directly linked to the murder of Anne Widdecombe. And I'm afraid I just can't tell you any more than that at this stage. It's a great tragedy that it took the death of Anne for the security services in Britain to finally take seriously the safety and security of reform politicians and reform.
It is quite extraordinary, this Tom Slater. Obviously, there's aspects of this, we can't go into detail. I'm reporting what the national newspaper is reporting, other papers also reporting this. Nigel Farage having to skirt around it a little bit more. There is more that's not in the public domain that cannot yet be published, but the fact that, again, that we've got the counter-terrorism police referring themselves to the Independent Office for Police Complaints, it does suggest that there may have been a major failing in the original investigation into an attack on Nigel Farage's home, and whatever comes out of that new line of inquiry does suggest that that some major mistakes have been made, and that, frankly, that looks like the authorities, as he's been complaining about, and many of us have been fearing, have not been taking the security of people like Nigel Farage seriously, despite the huge number of death threats he faces.
No, precisely. I mean, in that press conference, he also mentioned that his security, such that it was provided by the state, was pulled back just a few days before the assassination of Charlie.
2 days after, I think.
I believe it was before, because I think as if to say it wasn't that they responded to this in such a way, but shows that the lack of attention to this issue. And Farage, again, to put it gingerly, has been making this point for some time, that essentially there is a lack of concern, a willingness to do down the threat which is posed not just to reform MPs but those on the right of centre of British politics. If you look back to the way in which his claims were discussed in some of the left of centre media, and he kind of name-checked.
Laughingly.
Exactly. The idea that he's under the cosh in this way is ridiculous. This is being ginned up for political purposes. I don't think those takes have aged particularly well in light of this news, and I think it also, at the very least, causes us to question, shall we say, the ease with which Anne Widdecombe's alleged murder was just dismissed as probably wasn't political, burglary gone wrong,
no terrorism motive,
not really linked in any way to a broader threat which might exist. So I think, again, the fact that the key point here, and certainly thing that we can talk about, is that the fact that counter-terror police referring themselves to the IOPC, that's an admission that something has gone wrong.
Yeah,
and needs
we
to be
know
looked
that
at.
for certain, don't we? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the topics we are talking about. Get in touch, in particular about that mega-dinghy, 49-foot. It's going to cost us 25 million quid. Basically, those men, and they are largely men, they're never going to leave the country, not under the current regime anyway. We're going to be footing the bill for them. We're going to be footing the bill for their room and board, their benefits, the rest of their lives, and let's face it, putting them in prison at some point when a bunch of them do commit crimes, because statistically, they will. I'm sorry, that is the reality. I want to know your reaction. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Your call's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home and Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:32 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Paul's in Cardiff. Paul, you want to talk about this mega-dinghy, don't you?
Yeah, morning. Julia. It's getting really laughable now. And my question is, why are we paying France £660 million a year?
What are we paying? What are we paying them for? I mean, I don't know how they missed this dinghy. I don't think this dinghy would be hard to spot on the shore. I mean, it was overnight, but surely they have drones up with, heat-seeking infrared cameras, for goodness sake. That's not beyond the wit of man.
No, I know. What would happen if we stopped paying France the £660 million a year?
Well, apparently we'd get more boats. I mean, they have got... Well, the government will point out they have gone down in the last year. So far.
Yeah, that's from the government, if you believe that.
Well, I mean, these are the official stats. I mean, as much as we're going to believe official stats, I mean, there'll be people who don't get picked up, but it would appear that fewer people are arriving. It's just the question is, why are fewer people arriving? What's the reason behind that?
Yeah, I know. It's just absolutely... But, well, it's mind-blowing, really.
You say laughable, but no one is actually laughing. That's the key point. No. Paul, thank you for that. Oh, we've got another Paul. We've got a little brace of Pauls. Paul's in Leicester. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Julie. Just a couple of things.
Yeah.
When they say the boat things are down, they talk about it like it's economic policy, like interest rates. Oh, yeah, we're doing well. The boats are down. 2017, it didn't exist.
Yeah. Well, they were coming through the tunnel instead.
Oh, yeah, absolutely illegal. But then the main point, Julia, is I think we're 9 months short. May 2027, that's 30 years since Blair got elected.
Yeah.
And since then, we have been let down continuously. Even though the ballot box haven't said it, we have been let down 13 years, 14 years, now nearly 3 of this. And it's all been underpinned by immigration.
Yeah.
It wasn't a concern in the early 90s. It was a concern on your programme stuff. But then as it's built up, you can see the damage that it's done a generation later.
Yeah, and that's you're right. I mean, this thing, trying to explain to young people today that this is not normal by any... I mean, a few decades ago, this genuinely, we were talking about, 10 or 20,000 people. For much of the 20th century, actually, Britain had negative migration. I mean, more people left than arrived in the country.
Exactly. I mean, it's right. If we had the same population, I don't know, would you ask the economist Sunday? He gets one on. If we had the same population, roughly, millionaire than what we had May 1997, would we be in a better place of the GDP?
100% we would. There's no doubt at all about it. I couldn't agree with you more. And again, it's legal migration as well as illegal immigration. And you're right. And I'm fond of feeling my next guest was one of the people who will say, but the illegal boat numbers are down, the numbers of legal migrant visas are down. But the point is, they're down from absurd highs, still to a level that is far too high for the British people and nothing we ever agreed to. Paul, thank you very much. 2 great calls from Pauls. If you're not called Paul, you're also entitled to call in. Just saying. 10:35 is the time. Up next, going to talk to someone not called Paul. He's called Dan Hodges. You don't want to miss that. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. 10:37 is the time. This is Talk. Let's go straight to my next guest, Dan Hodges, commentator at the Mail on Sunday. Very good morning to you, Dan.
Good morning.
Love to hear your response to this, extraordinary pictures on pretty much all of the front pages of this mega-dinghy. No longer a small boats crisis, but a good God, that's enormous boat crisis. 49 foot, 25 metres, mega-dinghy, 230 migrants. It's bigger than a Boeing 737. It's bigger than a train carriage, a double-decker bus, carrying more people than we have on most of our naval vessels as crews, for goodness sake. What do you make of that arrival, and what does it tell us about our ability to, well, keep our shores safe?
Well, it tells us a number of things. I mean, obviously, it's absolutely preposterous that, that this is being allowed to happen. I mean, not just preposterous that the British government's letting it happen, but that the French government's letting it happen. And I think we'll come on to that in a second. But, you accurately predicted just before the break one of the other things I'm going to say. One of the things is actually that this is evidence that actually some of the things the governments have been doing to target the smuggling gangs is actually working. And I remember writing about this. I think it was last year that one of the things, obviously Keir Starmer, and I'm not exactly Keir Starmer's biggest cheerleader, but one of the things Keir Starmer did do was start to target, if you like, the smuggling at source. And one of the things that they did was to start to target the supply of small boats, to target the supply of the engines, to start to target the way that they're transited across Europe. And that is clearly having some sort of effect. That's why we're seeing boats of this scale, and it's why we're seeing the numbers down. Now, obviously, your callers are going to say, well, it's not enough, and they're right. But for me, the key thing is we do need to get to grips with this issue. I mean, we keep talking about it, but it is becoming, it never was a joke, but it's just completely out of hand. So to do that, we've got to start looking at what is working and trying to do more of it. And this is clearly something that is working. And I do think we need to do more about targeting this at source. But I think there is further we could go on that.
When you say targeting it at source, I mean, we're not going to be able to turn around a load of basket case countries across the third world.
No, I don't mean that. I mean
the people making the dinghies.
No, obviously that's part of it. I think we need, obviously, I do agree with those people that we need to have a sort of implement policies and policy solutions that start to address the pull factor, the fact that people clearly think if they just get on the boat and get to the UK, they're fine, they're sorted, they won't.
Well, they don't think it. They know.
Well, no, absolutely. I'm not disagreeing with that. I mean, that is part of it, and I do think we need, obviously, the Rwanda. Let's not beat about the bush. The Rwanda scheme was a disaster. We spent a lot of money.
Well, the Rwanda scheme was a disaster. It never happened.
Three people. Well, no, but I mean, the scheme itself. I mean, if a scheme doesn't lead to anyone being removed.
Well, it hadn't started. It was Rishi Sunak made a massive error in not bringing it forward. No, I was always of the view the Rwanda scheme was a drop in the ocean, and they weren't plans to properly upscale it. The Rwanda scheme would only work in the same way the Australian scheme worked when they tackled this under Tony Abbott, which is that nobody reaches our shores, nobody stays on our shores for more than 24 hours, everyone is gone, full stop, well, nothing to discuss. And that was not going to happen.
I spoke to other people. I actually remember speaking to Suella Braverman at the time, in which she was very confident. She was saying, well, look, if we stop a few, if we manage to show we can stop a few of them, that will I don't know whether she's right or wrong.
No, it was rubbish. It never have happened.
The point is, a Rwanda-style scheme, I think, is necessary. I think we've definitely got to do something to disincentivise. But as I say, I don't think that's enough now.
But Andy Burnham is not going to instigate that. He's a people pleaser. The people he most wants to please are his Labour backbenchers, his ministers, but also his own Labour Party members and all the lanyard class that you know so well. You were part of all these people for many years. You know perfectly well that they don't really have that big an issue with illegal migration. They think that people who've known about it are just racists and bigots.
No, but that's true up to a point. But there's another group of people that Andy Burnham wants to please as well. Firstly, he wants to please voters in his constituency in Makerfield who are going to throw him out at the next election if he doesn't get a grip with this issue. Right, so be under no illusions. Andy Burnham is aware and was made very aware. I spent the best part of a month in Makerfield. He's very aware of the strength of feeling amongst not just reform supporters across everyone across the board about this. And the second thing is, yes, he does want to please his MPs, but the way his MPs want to be pleased the most is they want to hold their seats, and a lot of them are of the view that if they don't get to grips with this, then they're not going to hold their seats.
Yeah, well, that's
the political reality.
That is the reality. He's going to have to persuade them of that, though, isn't he? Let me also ask you about the early release scheme, because that's still in the news. Andy Burnham has just put a post on X in the last few moments since the news, talking about, again, this big issue is not just the release of lots of offenders far too early into their sentences because of prison overcrowding, but particularly the release of the two killers of PC Andrew Harper, the man who convicted of murder, not eligible for early release, but they've been looking at every possible option, apparently, to try and keep these two men behind bars. Personally, I think that everyone who's committed manslaughter should be kept behind bars for their full sentence, but I'm old-fashioned like that. But he's written a post saying, I understand the depth of public concern about the potential early release of those involved with the killing of PC Andrew Harper, and I share it. I fully appreciate the anguish of Andrew's family and more broadly of all those victims and their families who may see those who caused them such harm not serve their full sentence. It's incumbent on me as a Prime Minister to do everything within my power to minimise that possibility, and I'm determined to do so. He said he spent days looking into the issue. I find it extraordinary, just recent days. He should have been looking into this a long time ago. I've not accepted that it is impossible to do more, which is strange because Number 10 put out a statement yesterday saying it basically was. And he's asked the Justice Secretary, he says, to fast-track the development of a plan to present to Parliament early next month when it returns, to create more headroom within the prison system. This is deporting more foreign national offenders, releasing some of the indefinite sentence prisoners, which was certainly a good thing, and moving some male offenders to the female estate. Things that everyone has been suggesting, but for some reason the Ministry of Justice hasn't looked at. He says he's increasingly confident that a more focused approach along these lines will allow us to reduce the number of people released early. I mean, is this going to be enough, or is this just proof that Andy Burnham went along with a policy he didn't really know much about, and then there was a backlash on the rapists, so then he went, oh, we'll accept rapists. Then there's a backlash, 900,000 signing a petition on PC Harper's killers, and then he's trying to react to that. And they don't really know what they're doing, and they're just listening to the civil service. But basically, is Andy Burnham not having a clue what he's doing as PM?
Well, there's a number of things. I mean, firstly, obviously, you're criticising Andy Burnham there. The reality is, this is not but this needs to be said. This is not Andy Burnham's. Andy Burnham did not create this crisis, nor actually, in fairness, did Keir Starmer.
True, I agree.
It's inherited from the last Tory administration. I was speaking to somebody a week or so ago who used to work in that administration, who actually said, one of the main reasons Rishi Sunak actually caused an early election is we knew this crisis was coming down the tracks.
Yeah. And I said in 2024 autumn that if the Tories were in power, they would have been releasing prisoners early too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Also, I think, again, where I'm going to stick up for Andy Burnham did actually step in and say, look, there are a raft of violent criminals. I'm not entirely clear what it was, but I certainly think it was rapists, people who committed sexual assaults. I think people who were involved in the grooming gangs. Yeah. And he said they're not coming out. Yeah. So fair play to him for that.
Domestic abusers, though, they can come out, no problem at all. Why Keir
Starmer, just to say, why Keir Starmer didn't do that, given he clearly had the powers, God only knows. Yeah. But fair play to Andy Burnham for that. Where I agree with you, though, is on this issue of the manslaughter, and in particular, PC Harper's killers. Now, the whole point about this is a discretionary release scheme.
Exactly.
Right? It is. These people are being released at the discretion of the government, not because they were up for release in any other process. I cannot understand, given it is discretionary, why it is not possible to extend that discretion to, even within the broader category of manslaughter, certain crimes and certain criminals.
Yep.
And frankly, if it requires a change in the law to enable that discretion to be utilised, change the law.
Because that could be done in a day. I mean, if we can take British Steel,
no one is going to argue against that. Similarly, and this is the other thing which I've seen a number of people in government saying, well, if we try and keep PC Harper's killers inside, then that'll just be legally challenged. Fine. Accept the challenge. Face the challenge. If people want to go to court and argue it, accept the challenge in court, appeal again, do everything you can to keep these guys, these scumbags, inside, and demonstrate to the public that you are doing everything.
But the key thing here, as you say, he's the Prime Minister. He has the power, as did previous Prime Ministers, to do things like build more prisons and failed to do so. This has been the first real test of anti-Burnham, where I'm going to please everybody. I'm Mr. Nice Guy. Dan Hodges thinks I'm great. And then he's failed it at the first attempt.
I don't think he's... I don't think
I've been reading your columns, Dan. Come on. You think the sun shines out of his backside.
No, Julia, he's been Prime Minister for, 3 weeks. And I'm not going to join on the bandwagon of everybody saying, "Oh, he's been a disaster." He's been a disaster. I don't think.
I didn't think he's been a disaster. I've just not seen anything.
I think the opinion polls show most people in the country don't think he's been a disaster.
No, most people. I'm
going to give him a chance.
Most people are so relieved he's not Keir Starmer. They'll give him an about.
I'm relieved he's not Keir Starmer.
Yeah, we're all relieved he's not Keir Starmer. Here's the thing, though. What does it mean? It's like today's announcement's all about vape shops. I mean, he's really tackling the big issues, isn't he, Dan?
Julia, I've seen you do programmes on vape shops.
I haven't done a whole programme on it.
You do programmes. I've seen you do
items on it.
Say we need to deal with the scourge of vape shops.
This is something that a junior minister should be talking about, not the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister needs to be tackling £3 trillion in debt, the immigration crisis.
Well, you're telling me every time I go round the country, be it for a by-election, local elections, I'll tell you one thing that everybody raises with me. Everyone raises with me vape shops.
The failures of the high street.
Vape shops and barber shops.
Yeah.
Andy Burnham says, I get it. I'm listening to you. I get it. He does something about it.
Well, he hasn't done something about it.
And go, Andy Burnham, he's not dealing with it.
He says he's going to do something about it. I'm just saying there are lots of little nitty-gritty things that need to be dealt with. I'm not sure that him just dealing with a lot of little nitty-gritty things is going to change the country.
If he was saying, I'm only going to deal with vape shops and nothing else. But as we've said, in relation to prison release, he has done something positive, which is he has said people from it. So I'm going to
we'll wait and see.
Him off Dan, for the sake of it.
We'll wait and see. Again, for me, it's just too reactive, as opposed to no, this is the right thing, this is the wrong thing, and I'm going to do it because it's the right or the wrong thing, as opposed to some people who are very, very televisual have been complaining on television, and now I'm getting bad press, and I'm going to act. That is not being a leader. We're going to have to leave it there. Time's against us. Got another guest to get to. Dan Hodges, great to have you on. Commentator at the Mail on Sunday. This is Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I'm sorry we're not getting much time for Tom Slater in this half hour. I've got to get to my next guest. Long chat with Dan Hodges there about Andy Burnham dealing with things like early release. Well, let's talk more about that with Danny Shaw, Home Affairs commentator, former advisor to Yvette Cooper when she was Shadow Home Secretary. Good morning once again to you, Danny.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you.
Hello.
Very well. Thanks for joining us. What do you make, just briefly, of Andy Burnham? His announcement in the last few moments on X, saying he's determined to take action to basically fast track some other ways of removing people from prison so that he doesn't have to release the killers of P.C. Harper and perhaps other manslaughter convicts. But do you think that A, that is going to be the right thing to do? And B, is it a bit extraordinary that the Ministry of Justice is only now looking at this when I'm pretty sure you and I have been discussing this for weeks?
Yes, look, it's a welcome announcement, but it should have been done weeks ago. And I think I've said to you before, Julia, we shouldn't really be in this mess. This is all the fault, I'm afraid, of David Lammy when he was Justice Secretary and his ministers and advisors who should have seen the problems caused by this new legislation, the 2026 Sentencing Act.
And the failure to build prisons during the Tory years and during the Labour years previously.
Yes. I mean, that's taken as read, but the Sentencing Act was meant to sort of try and address the problem in the long term, but they should have had a starting point, which was we are not going to give early release to the worst offenders, the most serious violent criminals and sex offenders, and they should have taken that as a starting point and then worked out how they were going to do it, but they didn't.
It's utterly bizarre that there would be anyone behind bars in prison, particularly there are people that are serving under a 1-year sentence still, even though now if you went to prison, if you went to court, you wouldn't be sentenced to prison if you got less than a 1-year sentence, you would just serve it as community order. When you're going, but we'll absolutely let out someone who's been convicted of killing a police officer. I mean, it's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it is. But so the problem should have been addressed some time ago when the Sentencing Act was drawn up. It wasn't. There was opportunities when it was going through Parliament for amendments to be added, but they weren't. Yeah. Andy Burnham then should have addressed it a few weeks ago when he came into office and he saw the problem. He thought he was able to do as much as he could by excluding rapists and some serious sexual offenders, but not excluding people convicted of manslaughter and the manslaughter of police officers. I'm afraid just beggars belief. It just
when I first saw the headline, I was absolutely flabbergasted by it, and not just the killers of a police officer, but killers of other people. I have a funny feeling that other families also don't want the killer of their family member released, but also even domestic abusers. We know that domestic abuse has a very high reoffending rate. You don't get put behind bars for a domestic abuse offence unless you've been harassing. You're either the same, usually man over woman, same woman again and again, or moving on to being a repeat offender with different women. Those men are a menace and a danger.
Yes, and we will wait and see whether the new legislation that he's going to propose next month will exclude people convicted of domestic abuse-related offences.
I mean, it really should.
I'm not convinced it will necessarily because it's a very large category. But the point is, you have basically got to say to civil servants at the Ministry of Justice, find a way, use your imagination. There are female offenders who don't have to be there.
Exactly.
There are people potentially on remand, some of whom could be bailed with tagging and curfew. There are 2,700 people serving sentences of less than 12 months. Some of those could be freed.
Well, also
that's a lot
more.
Non-violent offences.
That's a lot more than the few hundred over a few years of manslaughter convicts. Can I ask you, about this concern about probation officers likely to vote? There's a strike ballot which is going to be see the result today. It's indicative that there's going to be another strike ballot. We expect for them to go on strike. Already massively under-resourced, fewer and fewer. Many are leaving because of they're overstretched, underpaid. And we've already got that problem. Every time we see early release, there's less and less people able to actually, basically look after, keep an eye on more and more offenders, often more violent offenders coming out. We could see this early release of dangerous offenders, prolific offenders, at the same time as having probation officers on strike. How concerned are you that that poses a risk to the public even greater than the risk of these people coming out of prison early anyway?
Well, I'm very concerned. I mean, the problem with the probation service is that it's it's very overstretched. I think that they're down about 1,500 staff-wise across the country from where they need to be. Secondly, a lot of the staff they do have are very inexperienced. A lot of them are graduates, psychology graduates, people in their early 20s who may be very committed and well qualified but don't have a lot of life experience, which I do think you need when you're dealing with violent offenders.
They might be more inclined to believe these men.
I think there's a lack of curiosity within some. And the other thing is the probation service as a whole has had reorganisation after reorganisation over the last 20 years, which has meant some experienced staff have left. It's created a lot of upheaval. So you add all that together, it's a pretty demoralised and depressing picture. And also they are underperforming. All the inspection reports of adult probation services say they are underperforming, I think, almost exclusively across the country, particularly in terms of managing risk, and that's really alarming.
Wow.
Some kind of industrial action, I don't know whether it would be a full-on strike, but probably a work to rule or something like that, is obviously not going to make the problem any better. Certainly
not. Danny Shaw, really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much to you. Tom Slater, finally getting in. You weren't called Dan, so technically I shouldn't have brought you in in this half hour. We've had two Dans. But, I mean, the probation strike could be a real concern. That is going to make things even worse. And even that said, we've got, coppers like Mike Neville, former coppers who've been on the show recently saying, the people think that people are being tagged and watched. They're really not. And even if you breach your orders, you get a slap on the wrist and nothing happens.
But I think everyone's had a really eye-opening experience where, from top to bottom, the criminal justice system is concerned that there's so many holes, there's so much underfunding, there's so many people who are undertrained or underutilised. I mean, even when it comes to getting prisoners out of the estate, the regularity, as we saw last summer, with which the wrong person is released or released at the wrong time. I mean, there is so much.
That blows my mind. How do you let the wrong person out of prison?
The Epping migrant sex offender, of course, being the most outrageous example, but certainly wasn't the only one. And the thing is, as soon as the media and the public's focus moves on to this, you're going to see case after case after case after case.
And then Andy Burnham will organise some sort of early, a fast tracking of a debate on that as well, because he'll be reacting to that rather than seeing what we can all foresee right now without even having the benefit of the government advice. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that and the mega boat crossing the channel yesterday. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. Fast approaching 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much, as always, for being your company. If you're just tuning in or you've been with us for the last hour, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, watching on YouTube, all the other ways, great to have your company. If you did miss the last hour, do go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and you can find everything there. We're putting stuff out on X as well, of course. Today, of course, we are discussing the small boats crisis becoming the, wow, look at the size of that huge, ginormous boats crisis. As a record, 230 illegal migrants arrived yesterday on a 49-foot, 25-metre mega-dinghy. Also, we're going to be talking about 3/4 of England now in drought. Officials warning that conditions during the record-breaking dry spell are worsening. Yeah, I mean, have you seen your lawn lately? And I'll also be chatting to former police detective Rachel Fletcher, who was sacked and placed on the same misconduct blacklist as murderer Wayne Couzens and serial rapist David Carrick after criticising Northumbria Police's transgender strip search policy, basically saying that if a male suspect who claimed to be trans wanted to be searched by a female officer, he was just a, oh, shall we say, a smock in a frock. That's probably a rhyme I could probably use, but apparently didn't like her language and said she was transphobic. She's been sacked for that. We'll be talking to her. Lots more coming up as well. Delighted to say Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. I did lock the studio door, so he is still with us for the rest of the show. Thank you for staying.
I didn't have much choice in the matter.
You didn't have much choice in the matter, to be fair. Look, this 49-foot mega-dinghy carrying 230 migrants crossed the channel yesterday. It's the biggest number of people in the biggest dinghy we've seen so far. I have a funny feeling this wasn't built as a one-off. I think there might be more of these dinghies.
You might be right.
The cost of these, mostly men, they are vast majority of the people on that boat, as you can see from the image we've got if you're watching YouTube, are men. They're going to be here. We're going to put them up in housing or a hotel or house multiple occupancy. They're realistically never going to be, well, under the current regime, ever sent packing, in which case we're going to be facing, as taxpayers, a bill for some 25 million quid just for that boat full of people. Aren't we lucky? Because we've got nothing better to spend it on. Obviously, everything else is just fine in this country, so we don't have anything else we need to worry about. I want to know your reactions to all of that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV as well. Calls are charged at the national rate and text costs £1. Standard network rate message. So we've got to talk about this first, but then we will talk about Andy Burnham and his post on X and his promise to fast-track dealing with the issue of this early release offenders. But first of all, let's talk about the mega-dinghy again, because talking to Dan Hodges, the Mail on Sunday, he's, I mean, you know, he and as you were saying earlier as well, there is this element where we've just got a Prime Minister and a political party in the Labour Party. They don't really get the illegal migrant crisis as a problem. They genuinely do think that people like Nigel Farage and people like you at Spiked and me here and the rest of my colleagues at Talk talking about it just a bit far right and bigoted and racist, and well, we wouldn't have an issue if they were all white. That's what they'd say. As I said, I've made it very clear with a number of guests in recent weeks, couldn't care less about the colour of anyone's skin. What I absolutely care about is whether someone has a right to be here or not. These are largely fighting-age young men coming from basket cake countries, largely countries where their attitudes towards obeying the law, women's rights, children's rights, gay people, values, things, very, very different from ours. I don't want these people here. I would like them not to try and come here. I would like them, if they arrived here, to be sent packing on the day. I would like them, if they are going to be here, to be locked up a lesser until they can be shipped home or shipped to Rwanda, the Ascension Islands. I don't care where. I don't want them on the streets. I don't want to be paying for them. I certainly don't want them in a hotel or a flat at the end of my road. I'm pretty sure I speak for, I don't know, at least 90% of the British public on that. But I'm not sure that is the view of Andy Burnham or his government.
Yeah, but at the same time, to give them their due, maybe there's a much more positive spin to put on this. You see that mega-dinghy, it's got the capacity, a large capacity than the EasyJet flight, 230 people on it. It's longer than a double-decker bus. We do live in a country with a crumbling NHS and crumbling infrastructure. That many doctors and engineers is going to be the shot in the arm that this country needs.
You make a fair point.
So maybe their lax approach to this issue
Frankly, I feel a bit stupid now for not bringing that up. There we go. We won't even bother with the rest of the show. We'll just do silence because case closed. But genuinely, I mean, there's the thing. But when you do make jokes about this, when you literally, I hope it was a joke. No, but when you online, you sort of say, oh look, but more cultural enrichment. That phrase that was used once foolishly. And look at all those engineers and astrophysicists, And then people go, oh, you're being racist. No, but they're not, are they? These are unskilled men with often don't speak English. They've not got any skills that we need. And anyway, there's certainly skills that we can train up our own young people who are sitting on their backsides right now. Hello, you've just woken up. You should get a job. I don't want to pay for you anymore. Yeah? Hope that message got through as well. I mean, they're probably not awake yet. I mean, 8 minutes past 11, probably still dozing off last night's cider. I don't know. But this is the thing. We're in this ridiculous situation where there are still people, and I think an awful lot of people who are in charge, people at the Home Office, people in the government, the NGOs, the charities, a lot of the lawyers, they genuinely don't think this is an issue. Normal people look at that mega-dinghy and go, what the, and they go, do something about it. Do you think that Andy Burnham is going to do something about it?
I think he's going to be forced to react in the way that we've already been talking about. I think that, first of all, he's a politician who is led very much by public opinion, but in the worst possible sense. It's not about what did the country actually want, what have they been voting for the best part of a decade or more when they were asking the Tories to bring down migration. It was only going in the other direction. But that sense of, oh, this is a big media story, oh, people are really upset about it, oh, I must do something about it, but never actually dealing with the sources of the problem. I think that's what we're going to end up with.
I think he wants to be seen to be doing something about it. I don't think those are the same things.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think the problem is, Andy Burnham is a good example of this, but this goes for most of the Labour Party. There is a kind of hardcore, of course, of them who do not see this as a problem whatsoever. If anything, they probably think we should be chartering flights to take them from Calais over to the UK.
Safe and legal routes.
Safe and legal routes, i.e. just let them all in and pay for the ticket. But there's also a lot of them who just don't get it. They don't think it's a problem. They think, yeah, I guess that's an issue, but it's been over-egged, or the right-wing media are obsessed with it, or no, actually the numbers are coming down. I think he probably falls into that camp. But when you've got numbers at this level, even with the reduction that we've seen year on year in the past year, tens of thousands of people entering the country illegally, plus a daily drumbeat of stories of people who've been convicted for threatening to assassinate politicians, for sexually assaulting women and children. Every single day, you cannot ignore this.
The number of cases is huge. I'm not saying that every single one of those people is going to go and commit crimes, but far too many of them are, and we would all argue, I think, that one is too many, and it's way, way more than one. And bearing in mind, for years they've been trying to keep it quiet, so people's asylum status was not ever publicised, and that created, again, oh, we're not being told the truth. But again, it is fascinating by how many people on the left will say, but the numbers are down on illegal migrants. Does it make any difference to me whether it's 60,000 or 40,000 or 30,000? It's too many. Yeah. It's that the word thousand is the giveaway.
No, exactly. If it had genuinely gone out to a complete trickle, then maybe they would have a point.
Some people are always going to get... Every law is going to be broken eventually.
Exactly, but that's not what's happened.
But it's the same with legal migration, where people are given visas. And again, the Home Office, utterly surprised that people who've applied for visas, paid for visas, then used the visas and come to the country. Oh, I know. What a shock to everybody. But again, you've still got the same people saying, but the numbers... it was Rishi Sunak who brought them down after seeing the numbers under the Boris wave. Was it 2-3 million people turned up, with most of them not working, dependent, most of them. And most of the people coming, not actually skilled workers. I mean, skilled, but not paid, they're not doctors and engineers.
Skilled,
they're on average wages.
Sort of
exactly.
That sort of thing
well, exactly, as we've seen. But the fact that they say, well, those numbers have now been brought down, but they're still in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands. And we're all supposed to go, oh, thank goodness it's not 900,000, it's only 600,000. Again, the 100,000 is the giveaway. I'm old enough and ugly enough to remember 2010, when David Cameron promised, back of the fag packet, promised that we would get the net migration, again, net down to the tens of thousands. And by the way, given how many Brits are leaving, is it 250,000 are leaving? By the way, often of our brightest and best going, I think I'm going to go make a new life for myself somewhere else, but I'm not going to be taxed to the end of my life. And those people, I'm going to build my business and get on with things. Yeah. Those people we are losing are a big loss, and that still counts when it comes to the net. We're getting more people in not a benefit to us.
And it's also such a recent phenomenon. People act as if the migration that they've experienced, not even just over the past few years, but over the past 20 years, you say, has always been the norm. We did not have net migration north of 100,000 people until the late 90s, when a certain government came in and decided to turn on the taps. This is a recent phenomenon. It was not always the way.
It was not. No one gave permission. No one voted for this policy.
Well, that's the most important point, is that this was never in a manifesto. This was never backed by the British people. If anything, at every opportunity, every time it was an issue, they said, could you please slow it down and stop it?
No government has been elected, including Keir Starmer's government in 24, without promising to cut legal immigration.
Exactly. They might have spoken euphemisms, it might have been vague, but that's always been the requirement. But the kind of bleeding heart liberals on this, I think, really need to be called into question, because particularly take the illegal migration issue. This is a moral horror story from front to back. You're just unleashing lawlessness on the French coast, on the English coast, in the English Channel. You're incentivising people to make a perilous journey. You are feeding the business model of smuggling gangs. And in the process, you are inflicting on the countries that are in the pathway of these migrants, and even some of the people who are making the journey themselves. You saw some of the stories from Ceuta, which suffered that tremendous invasion of people from Morocco. Young migrant girls presenting themselves to journalists and to police, saying that they had been sexually assaulted by other migrants. You're creating this horror story.
Oh, when you see these women on these boats and they're pregnant or they've got young babies, they've usually been raped. That's part of, they get sexually abused as part of their price for getting on the boats. They've been in the camps for months.
This is what you're allowing
just
to
turn
happen.
a blind eye.
This is what the bleeding heart liberal is allowing to happen.
Absolutely.
It's horrific.
Every single time a migrant, particularly a child who should never be put on these boats, and that everyone should be prosecuted for that, it dies in the channel. That is down to the left, going, come on in, come. Honestly, I mean, again, I'm sorry. If I was in power, I'd have this solved day one. I'm stuff that Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef and others are talking about doing is, and Kemi Badenoch now as well. And the Tory party got to be dragged kicking and screaming to it. Really simple. You get out of the ECHR. You can stop boats. You send them somewhere else. They're in prison. You can stop this. Do what Tony Abbott did in Australia. We know it works. People are not stupid. They always think they infantilise these people. These people are making rational choices. They know they can come here and they know they can stay here. When they know they can't come here and they know they can't stay here, they won't come. It is that simple. Let's also talk about early release, because Andy Burnham, he's getting panicked on this one, because the headlines are not stopping. 900,000 people sign a petition wanting to stop the release of two of the killers of PC Andrew Harper. One, of course, convicted of murder, the driver of the car that dragged him to his death. That murderer is not eligible for this, but the other two killers are eligible for early release. He wants to stop that. For some reason, he decided to announce that rapists and child sex attackers, not all of them, by the way, but most of them, would be banned from this early release scheme. But he didn't have the power, or chose not to, stop people who committed manslaughter. He doesn't have the power, it would appear, to stop just those who committed manslaughter on an emergency worker. There would be legal challenges to that. Now, there's the argument we've had from our guest, Dan Hodges, earlier. Well, take the challenge, fight it in court. Well, that involves a lot of taxpayers' money. You can change the law. Parliament can be recalled. You wouldn't even need all your MPs. People are away on far-flung holidays with their families. Fine. Call Parliament, quick vote, job done. You can include these people. But the key thing is, to deal with the prisons crisis and the overcrowding we've got right now, it is simply not necessary to release, I think about 300-ish over the next few years of the 950 currently behind bars for manslaughter. This is not a large cohort of the 85,000 people behind bars. It's an absolute nonsense to claim it is. He could simply say, no one who's committed manslaughter comes out, or certain categories of manslaughter. It is within the gift of the government to make that decision. The fact that he has now ordered the Justice Secretary to fast-track the development of a plan for presentation to Parliament early next month to create more headroom within the prison system, things like removing foreign national offenders, something we've been saying for ages, maybe moving some of the female offenders out and taking over a female prison for some of the male offenders, but also dealing with the long-running injustice of the IPP sentences, these indefinite sentences, where some people, for really not very serious crimes at all, have served huge long sentences. I mean, again, that should have been dealt with long ago by the Tories and then by Keir Starmer. You think Keir Starmer would have understood that one. That could be dealt with. And he's saying, I'm increasingly confident that a more focused approach along these lines will allow us to reduce the number of people released early, and in the case of the most serious offenders, like the killers of PC Harper, prevent their early release altogether. Why wasn't this done before? Why wasn't this done the moment he became Prime Minister? Why did he apparently just not know anything about this issue at all before becoming Prime Minister? I mean, this has been a story in the news. Back in, 2023, the early release under Tories, 2024, early release under Keir Starmer. Apparently, Burnham, completely new to this. No part of his 10-year plan, apparently, has involved looking at the issue of releasing thousands of dangerous criminals and prolific criminals back onto our streets. He says he understands the depth of public concern and he shares it, but he didn't understand or share it enough to deal with it before he went on his hollybobs.
Yeah, he's played this really badly because he was almost getting some plaudits originally for just pausing and reviewing the early release.
That's because people thought he was going to stop it.
And then everyone thought, oh, this is so, so much, he understands people so much better. Then he just resumes it with the most minor of tweaks. Then he says that I've tried my best and I did everything I possibly could to not release PC Harper's killers, but it turns out you can't. Now he's saying, well, I'm sure we can find some sort of way around it. And now you think both him and Angela Rayner are parroting the sorts of quite commonsensical solutions that you might discuss on this show and on other sections of the media. You just get a sense that he's sort of not really in the driving seat, or he's sufficiently unconcerned with the detail, which, of course, a Prime Minister doesn't have to be across absolutely everything, but with something that is as politically radioactive as allowing killers back onto the streets.
But also
contradicting... You think he would take an interest.
He's contradicting what he has said repeatedly, what Number 10 said only yesterday. Yeah. They haven't got a clue. And again, does the left hand know what the right hand's doing? Does the left hand know what the left hand's doing? I mean, and again, if the one thing they're supposed to be great at is comms, well, your communications on this has been absolutely dire. And again, he is being dragged kicking and screaming into these decisions as opposed to showing leadership, not just decisive leadership, but if you say, no, there's nothing else we can do, and everyone's going, well, there's lots of other ideas you could do instead of releasing these people. Oh, OK. So, how incompetent are your justice ministers? How incompetent is the Justice Department? Clearly everyone's going, oh, the Justice Department say let's do this. My guess is, and our guest mentioned earlier, a lot of probation officers now, psychology graduates. Yeah. I met a lot of, they're all girls now. It's the girls' subject. It's the one that's replaced sociology as a girls' subject to go and do. Naive little things who've been completely indoctrinated by lefty teachers and lefty academics at university. We've talked about some of those in recent days, haven't we? Even at Cambridge University. And basically, they're not going to believe, they're going to fall for every single line from these experienced ex-cons who turn up in their office day after they've been released. And they're going to fall for every single line they say. I mean, it's just embarrassing. And it seems like Andy Burnham is as well. But he's not showing any leadership. He's simply reacting to a petition. I don't want anything happening because of a petition. I want governments to do things because it's the right thing to do. Yeah,
no, I think that's fair. And he's falling into that trap that many of his predecessors have, which is failing to see when you've got a big scandal like this kind of coming over the hill, even though it's ridiculous because he knew he was going to have to do this. He knew he was going to have to make a decision at least on it. And then also suddenly only allowing your hand to be moved by petitions, by victims' families coming forward. It's not to say these things aren't unimportant. I think the way in which PC Harper's family have led this discussion has been very effective and
the victims of grooming rapists
exactly.
as well.
But at the same time, the fact that it has to come to that does not bode well for his government, which is brand new. Well, he's only just got really his feet under the desk because he's been on holiday. And he's already walking into a kind of media firestorm, even when he was getting so much media adulation as 5 minutes ago. It's really not going
I think it's very interesting, actually. We're seeing BBC and Sky ITV, and sometimes when they're talking about these topics and talking to his ministers, he doesn't turn up for interviews. I mean, that's Gary Lineker's doing it and offering him a free packet of crisps. But he lying about genocide in Israel, which is quite happy to nod along to, in Gaza, sorry. But he... There was an attempt at genocide in Israel, but that was by Hamas. Try and keep up. But he hasn't been paying attention to foreign affairs, doesn't care about them. But we had all these little announcements, the first few days. Oh, is it amazing, all these little announcements. But even within a week, a lot of the mainstream media that we know are sort of big Labour supporters, big Burnham supporters. Yeah. Even they are already a bit cynical, going, come on, A, you've got to submit yourself for interviews, some scrutiny, and B, this isn't really going to hack it. And we were talking to, Dan Hodges a little bit earlier, and he's making, like, the latest announcement is about high streets. He says high streets have been hollowed out over decades of decline. He's wanted to crack down on the spread of vaping shops and bookies. He wants to give local councils more of an ability to basically, stop these vape shops and everything taking over local high streets. He said, I said we would improve Britain's high streets, exactly what we're starting to do, putting communities back in control. He's saying giving local people a real say over what opens on their high streets. Local councils will be given the powers they need to rein in unwanted shops and bring town centres back to life. That's all very well. And yeah, the vape shops, sprung out of nowhere, the bookies, the Turkish barber shops, able to cut about 50,000 people's hair in a day.
Enough and if not enterprise.
In a little village, Can't we all know these are dodgy? But again, this could all be dealt with by, simply, and not just future ones, but the ones that exist right now. You just have to send a load of kids in with cameras on, trying to buy vapes and being sold them illegally. You can then shut down the shop for 6 months under the current law. They want to extend it to a year. And then, you take their licences. There are loads of... Again, we don't need new laws. Just need to enforce the laws we've already got. But again, if you want to sort out the high streets, you have to have other shops that can afford to be there that actually aren't breaking the law. You need to not have high business rates. You need to... Here's an idea. Wouldn't it be useful? My local high street, I like to think I'm not the stupidest person in the world. Can I work out when I can and cannot park for up to 20 minutes outside some of the shops on my local high street? I cannot. Genuinely, it is... Is that for loading? Is that the boxes? It's so confusing. And mostly since COVID, they turned the whole thing into a red route, so no one can stop. So you've got a high street that's basically completely empty, apart from when the school kids come out and terrorise the high street, and anyone who's got any sense goes, oh, it's just gone 3 o'clock, might give it a miss for the next couple of hours. I'll go out later when the school kids have finished marauding down the street, smashing into people and shouting at people and mugging people. That's the reality. And I live in a nice area, but people can't park. So a lot of people are going, well, I'll go to the shopping centre, I won't go to the high street. There are loads of different ways that you can help high streets. But we don't need new laws about it. We just need to actually make it possible for legal businesses to operate and to enforce the law for the businesses that are quite clearly operating illegally.
There's also something quite piddling and embarrassing that you've got the Prime Minister of the country talking about vape shops and the sort of minute...
There should be a consumer rights minister doing this announcement.
And it's not to say that these things aren't important. He's absolutely right that you go around the country and the way in which you have high streets which have got either empty shops, if they're not empty, they're either the charity shop or the vape shop or the Turkish barber. It's a real genuine
nail bars, that's the other one.
Feeling of decline, and you see it everywhere, and it's something which people's pride in place is affected by it. So all of that's very true. But first of all, dealing with this sort of stuff should kind of be the bare minimum. A lot of this is an issue of enforcement and also broader policy in relation to the economy, tax regulation, energy prices, what have you, which have made it very difficult for the high streets, which is defined by small businesses, or at least that's what we would prefer it to be. Meanwhile, you've got him also running around saying, oh, I'm going to help out the cost of living by giving you 86 pence a week off your energy bill.
I'm looking forward to spending mine.
Trimming a little bit off of the business rates for pubs, which will give them, what, £1,000 a year each, which is barely going to touch the size.
But not cafes, they don't count.
No, exactly, because he doesn't like to go to cafes as much. I guess that's how we decide policy now. Did you see his latest thing about how unwanted subscription renewals, so, that extra £8 a month that you've accidentally opted into once again? That is going to be the thing that they're going to ink his name in the history books.
Citizens Advice, who basically advise people whose finances are completely up the creek, they won't need any volunteers anymore.
Done.
Because that would be job. Because this is going to be. But each thing is perfectly valid and welcome.
Exactly. Why not?
Most of it, by the way. But even down to one of the things like that you're not allowed to have discounts in shops. Where they're not really a discount. There's already a law. There's literally already a law about that.
It's one of those things where it sounds like people assume, rightly, that it would have been sorted already. So it's even more outrageous.
But even a couple of weeks ago, there was this announcement. Number 10 put out the statement, on behalf of Andy Burnham, that they were going to tackle issues like profiteering by supermarkets. Keir Starmer tried this as well. Supermarkets aren't profiteering. They make, on average, something like 3% profit margin. They just make a lot of money because they sell a hell of a lot of stuff. because we buy a lot of stuff, because we ain't going out to restaurants and cafes and pubs anymore. We're buying food at home. But also, there is massive competition. If there is one market that works really well, if not for dairy farmers, I accept that. We need to pay more for our milk, everybody. But there's one business market that works really well. It is supermarkets. And he went off supermarket. Oh, well, you know, prices are going up. Prices have gone up because the cost of energy has gone up, and the price of food around the world has gone up. That's why food has gone up.
But it's like it's confusing being Prime Minister with like presenting that watchdog programme or something. Like this is not the stuff of kind of macroeconomic policy which is going to sort out.
£1 trillion in debt, 7 million people still on NHS waiting list, ballooning welfare bill, 1 million young people.
You want to stimulate the economy,
working.
Get those people working, you know, and out of this fug that they've been allowed to enter into because of the
absolute
system.
Crisis on defence, net zero. There are so many things, big picture things, that he needs to be tackling. None of those things
and yet
that
he's
going to do
popping up and basically saying, have you been missold PPR? I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous.
But nothing that he has said so far will do anything to promote good growth. So good growth in every postcode, not just growth, good growth, the special kind of growth, not the bad growth. We don't like the bad growth, like vape shops, but good growth in every postcode. Nothing he has said so far. But one of the things he's also apparently doing on his little listening tour, he's doing a listening tour this starting this week, is he's going to be telling people about his 10-year plan, which is weird, as we were saying on the show yesterday, because he hasn't told the rest of the country about it. Is he just going to tell Mrs Miggins, who he meets, he's going to talk to people where they are. He's going to meet Mrs Miggins, you know, in Liverpool High Street or whatever, some high street there, and he's going to go, let me tell you about my 10-year plan. I haven't told Parliament yet. Haven't costed it yet. I haven't got a budget yet. But I haven't told the country yet, other than all abolishing homelessness and number 10 North and good growth. But I'm going to tell you.
Whenever a politician goes on a listening tour, it's usually a sign that they're not really listening. I mean, it's the last refuge of the out-of-touch politician. Emmanuel Macron's done it, Hillary Clinton has done it before. And it's an insult to the public's intelligence, because, of course, he should listen to the public. He should listen to them when they vote for parties that want to get control of immigration. He should listen to them when they vote for Brexit, something that he's desperate to overturn, even though he has to temporarily pretend that that is not the case. But these are just going to be a series of stage-managed media non-events in which he's walking around with Mr. or Mrs. Miggins, pretending to care about what they have to say for about 4 or 5 minutes and then getting back in the car to go to the next place. This is a complete sham and a pantomime, and yet
genuinely,
we're expected to be impressed by it.
The people who are saying right now, they're giving him the benefit of the doubt and he's boosting the polls, good luck to you, because it's just going to be laughable when you decide and realise just what a waste of space this guy is. 11:29 is the time. Going to take a couple of calls. Mrs Miggins, if you'd like to call in, give us a call. Is there a Mrs Miggins? Call in if you call Mrs Miggins. 0344 499 1000. After that, we're going to be talking to a former detective constable who's been sacked because apparently she's transphobic, because she doesn't actually think that a lot of the prisoners and the suspects who claim to be trans females, trans women, actually were. I know. What was she thinking, having a reality check like that as a police officer? We'll be talking to Rachel Fletcher in a few moments. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 11:32. It's just time for one call. Get a couple of messages as well on that mega dinghy that crossed the channel yesterday. Dan is on the line. He's called up on 0344 499 1000 as you can at any time, especially if you're called Mrs. Miggins. But Dan is not called Mrs. Miggins and he's in Portsmouth. What do you want to say, Dan?
Hi, Julia. Yeah, that boat. They're not going to stop.
No. It won't be the only one that size either.
Whatever government comes, it won't be able to. They've got no interest in stopping it, and they won't be allowed to stop it. It's as simple as that. And what's happening is they're using these boats. I'm as annoyed as anyone about all of this, right? But I've got a triple reason for being annoyed. The boats are bad enough, all right, because it's the audacity and the annoyance of not having borders. But the issue for me is the speed and scale of which our society is being changed. The mass immigration that's coming in from countries that don't have our values. Okay, they don't have the same education and values and everything that we have. And the problem is the boats take the attention away from the real issue. The real issue is legal immigration. You know, when you've got somebody coming over to do a job in a hospital and they're bringing 12 family members with them and they're legal, that's what's changing it at a rate of knots. Not the small boats, but the small boats are taking they could change that with the sweep of a pen.
Oh, of course legally. They could. Well, they could do both at the sweep of a pen. The extraordinary thing is we brought in all these people to work in care homes. And I'm visiting my aunt in her care home yesterday. I know the people working in these care homes and lots of people doing amazing work. But bringing people in on low wages, when as much as it's very important work, it's not highly skilled, as in you need years of training to do it. Doesn't mean it's not important work. But we have millions of people who are unemployed in this country, and we're bringing people in with their families, and I'm afraid they're not on the wages they're being paid net contributors even while they're working, and they certainly won't be when they're retired.
No, and also they're bringing extended families in. I saw a figure, something like 10 to 12 people.
Some countries have, I think Nigeria was particularly bad at that, where people, and I don't understand why you're allowed to bring anyone other than your husband or wife and your children under 18. I don't understand why anyone's eligible to bring a brother or sister or a grandparent.
No, I work abroad. I don't take my missus or kids. I work abroad.
Yeah, but that's a choice. You just want a break.
No, but seriously, if you go somewhere, if you go in many countries where they use a lot of expat workers, they're there and they send the money home and they go home when they can. And we don't need to. We're headed for big problems in this country.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. I couldn't agree with you more. Dan, thank you very much, dear. Just a couple of other text messages. Steve says, as long as we keep letting them stay, they'll keep coming. But if they keep coming, how long will it be before we're bankrupt? It's like being on a picnic with a nice fruit pie and ants come and start eating it. Then more ants come. How long before there's no pie left for you? Oran says the lifetime cost for these migrants are millions and we wonder why there's a cost of living crisis. Joe says, Britannia rules the waves. Nah, mate. And Aaron says we've had too many weak people in charge of our country for far too long now. 11:35 is the time. We're going to be talking up next to a former detective constable at Northumbria Police, that's Rachel Fletcher, who's sacked. You'll be amazed when you find out what she was sacked for. She's on the show up next. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:36 is the time. Let's talk right now to my next guest. She's a former detective constable at Northumbria Police. I say former because she was sacked last month because apparently she'd made a number of sexist and transphobic remarks. That is what Rachel Fletcher was told. Luckily, she is being backed by the Police Federation in her fight for justice, sacked for gross misconduct, put on a blacklist alongside the killer and rapist officers who we've heard so much about in the news, Wayne Couzens and David Carrick. Let's talk to her now. Rachel Fletcher, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks for having me on.
Very much appreciate you joining us. Now, you are, if you don't mind me saying, 49-year-old. You're a single mum of two. You've also been a child protection and family liaison officer for many years. You were pivotal in putting prolific paedophile Ross Jackson behind bars. He jailed for 23 years earlier this year. You know, doing fantastic work to try and keep people safe. You've been sacked for gross misconduct. What exactly was the claim against you?
So the claims against me were that I had said that I hated men, that I'd made a joke that all men should be on a curfew to stop nighttime rapes, which was during a conversation about women's safety and freedom of movement in public, particularly in the hours of darkness. There was also an allegation that I had made a comment, disparaging comment about trans-identifying men, which I didn't.
Can I just clarify, this is basically men, these articles often say biological men. There's only one kind, there's men and there's women. The men who identify as if they are trans when they're not, well, I mean, no one is trans, but men who claim that they are women, particularly at the point when they are being arrested and they get strip searched, insisting, as Northumbria Police has allowed, quite incorrectly, that they can be strip searched by a female officer. And you described those men, it is alleged, as, I can't say the actual word, let's say locks in frocks, referring to their obvious male appendage. Did you actually say that or not?
No, I didn't say that. I did say the locks word, but it was while discussing unlawful search guidance that had been introduced nationally by my Chief Constable, Vanessa Jardine, who was the LGBT portfolio holder for the National Police Chiefs Council.
Of course she was. Of course she was. But this is it. Even the comments you've made about, men, male curfew. I mean, genuinely, if we want to solve, sex attacks on women, a nighttime curfew on men would be the simplest and most obvious and probably surefire way of doing it. Perfectly reasonable comment to make in jest. Of course, you're not being serious. But it's interesting that you were reported by men. They found your comments offensive. Given what we've heard over the years, and not just when we've had the outrageous cases, David Carrick and Wayne Couzens in the police, but many, many years, and I've spoken to many police officers, either on air and off air, about their experiences, particularly female officers, of what, frankly, they've had to put up with. I mean, bearing in mind, Wayne Couzens was nicknamed the rapist in his police station, because that's normal, isn't it, for anybody in any world, let alone as a police officer. That somehow these hard-bitten men working the police force apparently found your comments as a woman too awful to listen to.
The truth of the matter is, I wouldn't say I was reported by men. I was told by senior officers that I was offending people themselves, I believe, and they went fishing for anything that I'd said that they could misconstrue as discriminatory or offensive, because I wouldn't stop calling out institutional misogyny, including unlawful policy, procedure and guidance. And I'd done that with a working group. I'd done that with police senior.
And you mean by that things like female officers having to search men who claimed, as an awful lot of men do when they're arrested, particularly for crimes against women or crimes against children, oh, I'm trans.
Yes, exactly. And the police have a real responsibility in that regard, because we're at the beginning of the pipeline that ends with men and women's prisons. If we record a man as female, when we arrest him, it just follows down the line, and the courts then treat him as female, and then the prison service treats him as female. We're the police, we have to get it right.
I mean, our crime statistics should be accurate. I certainly now, whenever I see any report of a crime and they say that a woman has committed a crime, that the suspect who was arrested at the Covent Garden stabbing, so my immediate thought was, is it a woman? Because I can't trust the reporting anymore.
Yes, exactly. Mine too. And in policing, it's really, really important that we get that right. We must be able to identify who's who. Otherwise, we can't protect the vulnerable.
Well, it's a fact. And the only thing should be recorded should be fact. Look, this happened. Did this come as a complete shock to you?
Not really. I'd had lots of hostility in response to the work I'd been doing with the Gender Critical Working Group and police scene, so it wasn't a great shock.
So explain that. So basically, you're in a police force run by a very, very woke senior chief constable who basically is signed up to all the rainbow stuff, and
yes.
you were being a bit of a difficult woman, weren't you? Not playing along.
Yes.
Naughty you.
That's it, basically. An uppity woman who wouldn't stop saying, this isn't right, we shouldn't be doing this. How does this impact on our violence against women and girls strategy and, search policy, crime recording, etc. And when I wouldn't back down on receiving lots of sort of tellings off, discipline, hostility on intranet articles, etc. They obviously had to find another way to silence me, and this is the way that they found. But the investigation went on for 2.5 years. So for all that time, I was on restricted duties and wasn't allowed to do my job properly.
So we were paying your wages. Yes. You went through the stress of that, and for 2.5 years, I think you might have said you might not have basically signed up to the complete fabrication, the myth about trans women or women, that you basically were not allowed to do your job catching, sex offenders and paedophiles, which is quite a job. It's quite useful. I mean, some of us just yap on the radio. Some people are essential personnel doing useful stuff. I would say that catching paedophiles and sex offenders is one of the useful jobs, but you had to sit at a desk, basically.
Yes, that's right. I was allowed to finish one case because the victims didn't want to proceed without me, just because we'd developed such a bond of trust over the time that I'd been investigating. Yeah. So I was allowed to see that through, which I was really pleased to do. That was the Ross Jackson case.
Yeah.
But other than that, yes, I wasn't allowed any public contact because of these comments.
Well, I mean, what with your dangerous views of understanding biological fact, God forbid anyone should come into contact with that. Were you given much support, privately, personal messages, a friendly touch on the elbow, messages at home from your colleagues, male or female, when this all started to happen?
Yes, I received loads of support at work. Most people in policing agree with me.
Yeah. Because they're sane.
The problem is that you can't say so, because otherwise you end up in the position that I'm in. Policing's very much, sorry, that's my cat. The leaders believe that they know better than everyone else, and everyone should just do as they say, including the public. There's no interest in knowing what the public think or how the public feel about things. They won't listen to anyone. Yeah. And so it's very much, we are in charge, you will do as we say. Yeah. And if you try and sort of say, well, actually, I think there's a problem with that, this is the response that you get.
And yet your views, what you were expressing, and this is, very similar, is it not, to Maya Forstater from Sex Matters, who's a big friend of the show. And she basically lost her job, but she fought a case, lost it, won the appeal. And I've struggled with the language here, but your belief, because it's not a belief, it's a fact. Your knowledge of the fact of biological fact, and that men can't be women and women can't be men, you can't change your gender. That is a protected belief. I mean, it's not; it's protected knowledge. So I'm surprised that the legal precedent that set did not in any way impact on the disciplinary procedure you were under.
It did, in a sense, because they wanted to discipline me for my views, but realised very quickly that they couldn't. And so that's when they looked around.
They went looking for,
Yeah, they went trying to find something that
You said a naughty word at work, which I imagine people say far worse every single day.
All the time. We talk about sex offenders all day long. That's not unusual language in the office. And this is not in front of members of the public. And certainly, I am not... It's not for the police to tell people whether they can identify as whatever they want. Of course, people can't do that. My point is, when it comes to policing, we need to deal in facts, evidence and truth, and we need to make sure that we can be clear about who is who needs protecting from who.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're being supported by Police Federation, the union for police force. But, I mean, have you contacted the Free Speech Union at all? This sounds like right up there, Strasser, got some very good lawyers.
Yes, it very much is. And Police Scene UK, certainly we spoke to the Free Speech Union very early on after we launched. And so we are, sort of in contact with them.
Good.
I was fortunate that I had the right insurance policy through the Police Federation, that I didn't need any other help at the time.
Good. Yeah. But a lot of people don't. I mean, this is the thing. Here's the issue. I mean, you say the vast majority of police officers, I mean, I know a lot of police officers, friends of mine, they just want to do a good job. They all want to leave. If you ask most police officers, they'll tell you exactly how many years, months, weeks and days until they can retire, but can get away from, they call the madness of this PCing, which is going on. How can more the sensible rank-and-file police officers, all the way up near to the top, how can they stop this madness from happening and be good officers like you being pushed out because you understand biological fact?
What we need is for the government to step in and take control of police leadership. It's completely unaccountable and unregulated. They can do whatever they want and there are no consequences. If you look at Craig Guildford, for example, from West Midlands Police, he was accused of having lied to the Home Affairs Select Committee, and I'm not...
No, he did lie to the Home Affairs Select Committee.
I'm not going to comment on whether
he can sue me forever. I don't care. He lied.
I can't afford to be sued, so I won't comment on that. But all that happened was he had to retire again. He'd already banked his pension. He had to retire again. That's not a consequence for any kind of misconduct. And my chief constable hasn't faced any kind of consequence for breaching the law with the pride marches or coming up with this unlawful policy. Yeah. So it seems unfair, but also we need rank and file officers to start standing up to leadership.
We do.
This is not right. There's no reason why policing in this country shouldn't be absolutely top notch and gold standard. We've got so much talent, intelligence and passion, but we're just not allowed to do what we need to do. And that needs to change now.
Rachel Fletcher, I'm so pleased we got a chance to talk to you. You keep up the good fight. Thank you. I know so many people like you actually take a massive, personal hit to your reputation, to your bank balance, to your pension, from standing up for what is right. But you've done the right thing. We absolutely support you. I know my audience will be cheering you on right now. Please stay in touch. Anything we can do to help, we will be really, really happy to help you here. Former Detective Constable at Northumbria Police, Rachel Fletcher. Thank you very much for that. Tom Slater, just quick response to that?
No, it's hard to improve upon what you just said there, Julia. There's unfortunate that people have to put their head above the parapet in this way and stick up for themselves, but unfortunately that's what it's taken to beat back a lot of this madness in so many of our institutions. But I dare say we're going to have many more cases like this.
Oh, absolutely. But we need more Rachel Fletchers. They're the people standing up for sanity. As simple as that, sanity. George Orwell wrote about these people. 11:49 is the time. Up next, going to be talking about drought hit Britain and net zero. This is up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:52 is the time, and let's talk about this drought, this hot weather. It's going to be peaking again this week. 5th heat wave, we're told. I don't know, we've had one in between. That wasn't a heat wave, have we? Thought it was just one long one this summer. Let's talk about this all with Ross Clark, author of Not Zero. A very good morning to you, Ross.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Look, amber heater health alerts for almost all of England with the next heat wave. The only time it's going to be vaguely pleasant is going to be either overnight or around sort of 7 p.m. tomorrow, where we get a solar eclipse across a lot of the country to dim the light for a little bit. But, I mean, we're told this is, you know, the worst since records began, the hottest June and July since records began. I mean, records since when? When did they begin?
Well, reliable meteorological records begin about sort of 110, 120 years ago. But this has certainly been a very hot and dry summer, and temperatures are Britain are gradually rising. Summer, winter, all times of year. There's a gradual upward trend in temperatures and extreme temperatures as well. But when it comes to drought, the story is really rather different, because while this is an exceptionally dry summer, right up there with some of those we've had in the past, 1976.
I remember it well.
1995 and 2003, and also 2022. It's actually against the general climatic trend, which is towards slightly wetter summers, and that's even in southeast England, which, you know, the driest part of the country. You know, because climatic trends are measured over 30 years and measured over the past fortnight or the past 5 years. 30 years is the standard.
It's weather until it's over 30 years, and then
exactly,
it's climate.
Yeah. And if you compare, you know, the past 30 years with the previous 30 years, UK summers have got a little bit wetter. UK winters have got quite a bit more wetter, but even so, even in the summer, there is a slightly higher rainfall, and also.
But you were talking very slight. I mean, it's measurable, but it's. The thing is, we notice any weather that isn't just blur. We notice it and we talk about it, and we tend to forget what it was last year.
We do, yes, and we tend to have very, very short memories. And, you know, we're all told now that this drought is a sign of climate Armageddon to come. But, you know, if you have slightly longer memory, you might remember between 2007 and 2012, when we had a string of very wet, cool summers. And that, of course, we used to be told was climate change as well. Well, you know, it's climate change.
No, but this is it. It doesn't matter if it rains, if it's dry, if it's hot, if it's cold, if it's average. It's always down to climate change. And again, you and I differ. You say, you know, the man-made aspect of it. We have no idea what man-made aspect of it is. But the reality is, our weather does actually change a lot. And it's interesting, when you talked about the droughts, you named, you know, we all went, 1976. And most people think, oh, that's the last time. No, it happens periodically. Weather changes.
It does, yes, and I named those other very dry summers in 95 and 2003, which a lot of people sort of fail to forget now. But of course, you know, that period which I talked about, where we had those very wet summers between 2007 and 2012, that was when global warming miraculously became climate change, if you remember.
Yes, that was because we weren't warming at the time. I remember those summers because I had a newborn child in 2006 winter, and I had the summers thinking, oh, this is going to be great. And it wasn't for quite a few years.
No, it wasn't. And, you know, that was a period of 6 years we had those summers in a row. And, of course, you know, it looked at the time, well, this is the new normal.
Yeah.
You know, dread phrase that everyone uses nowadays. But, of course, it turned out it wasn't the new normal.
Well, now we've got a new normal.
Yes, yeah. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if the same happens to this run of dry summers we've had. as happened to that run of wet summers and gets reversed. And
well, this is my thing.
By the end of the decade, it may well look very, very
and it'll average out. But this is my thing. I'm thinking, I'm finally giving, when they finally do, every year I'm going, do you know what, I'm going to buy an aircon unit for the bedroom. And every year I never get round to it until it's too late. You can't buy them. I'm going to do it this year, and I can guarantee you we're going to have a miserable wet summer next summer because I'm going to buy an aircon unit and it'll just jinx it. And frankly, that'll have more input than any government policy. But we're also told, again, we've got fires. We've got fires down in the south of the country, wildfires, and people obviously get very, very worried by wildfires. They are very, very visually very, very scary. We see them in other parts of the country. We see them in California. We see them in Australia a few years ago, in France as well. But of course, actually, and we've talked about this many times, but it's worth reiterating, the number of wildfires is actually down quite considerably globally, isn't it? Although we see them on our TV screens and on our social media, the number is going down quite considerably.
There is a gradual downward trend in the incidence of wildfires. But by the way, the best way to measure them is not the number of wildfires, but the acreage that is burnt in wildfires. Because otherwise, you get 3 small fires. If they merge together into one big fire, then that's one fire rather than 3 fires. So we should look at the acreage or the hectareage that's burnt annually. And on that metric, there is a downward trend in wildfires on every continent as well. Not just Europe, but North America.
But again, you don't see that stat ever on the BBC. Just finally, I must ask you about this. Solar eclipse tomorrow evening in Britain, across most of Europe, but Britons have been warned not to use their dishwasher for 2 hours on Wednesday between 6 and 8 p.m. Because Britain's energy supplier, Octopus Energy, is asking customers to delay using devices like washing machines, dishwashers, because we're going to be blocking up to 96% of sunlight, and this is going to create a solar generation, plunging us into the moments of we're not going to be generating solar power, problems with our grid, and basically this talks about blackouts and the like. This is madness in the 21st century.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, there's the solar eclipse is down for between 6 and 8 p.m, I understand. And then at about 8:30 p.m, there's another event which happens every evening. It's called a solar eclipse by the Earth. The sun goes down, it gets dark, and we produce 0 solar energy.
And probably no wind either. Oh, Ross, always good to get you on. Ross Clark, author of Not Zero. Apologies, it was so short and sweet, but always so good to talk to you. More from Tom Slater coming up. Delighted to say, joining us in the studio will be the columnist at The Times and the Sunday Times, Matthew Saeed, talking about all of the big stories. Plenty more to come, including your calls. Do give us a call and have your say on all the big topics. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, but you already knew that. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or watching on YouTube, all the other ways of watching and listening, it is fabulous to have your company. Thank you very much for joining us. If you've just tuned in, frankly, where have you been the last 2 hours? But you can go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing more about the small boats crisis. It's become the, oh my God, have you seen the size of that? It's huge boats crisis. As a record 230 illegal migrants arrived yesterday on a 49-foot mega-dinghy. For the young people in the room, 25 metres. Bigger than a 737, the jet you're probably going on a holiday on EasyJet or Ryanair on. Bigger than a double-decker bus, bigger than a train carriage. Is that a good idea? Do you think perhaps we should do something about it? Also going to be talking more about the early release scheme for prisoners. Andy Burnham absolutely says he's very entirely confident he's going to stop the release of the killers of PC Andrew Harper. He's also announced plans today to clean up our local high streets, aims to make it more difficult for new vape and gambling shops to be approved. Plus, we're going to be talking to an economist about a warning that the Prime Minister is looking to raise taxes by up to £25 billion to fund his spending pledges. That's pretty much the amount that Rachel Reeves put it up by her in her first budget. And that worked out really well for her, didn't it? Plus, we're going to be talking about Britain's largest teaching union boss. They've become the latest latest boss in Daniel Kebede to distance themselves from that open letter supporting the frankly shamed former Cambridge professor Jason Arday. We'll talk about all of that. Plenty more besides. Tom Slater, I'm delighted to say, editor of Spiked Online, is still with me in the studio. Afternoon to you.
Afternoon.
And we're joined now by Matthew Syed, columnist at both the Times and the Sunday Times. Very good afternoon.
What a joy, Julia, to be here, because we occasionally bump into each other socially, not that much, not in the metropolitan elite circles and dinner parties and so on. But if I'm in the building...
The rule is, if you're in the building, you have to come in the studio.
And it's great to connect with Tom. And the build-up you've given to Tom now, the bar is high,
I say a lot of very nice things about Tom, but only off air.
Exactly.
I think genuinely, I'm going to embarrass you on now. I think Tom Slater is one of the finest minds of the young journalists in this country. I really do.
That's an incredible
I really, really do.
But it does put pressure.
What do I know? I think you're good as well. What do I know?
Good, not great
Matthew,
though.
right.
Above average.
You're a must-read in the papers, particularly your Sunday Times article. Although I didn't agree with everything you wrote this weekend, interestingly. But I want to know. We'll come back to that.
But you know what? The only reason I say it is because the producer outside said that it had stirred up a bit of a hornet's nest. It was about the Cambridge academic who got the job, DEI, overreach, wokeism. Yeah. I'm completely against it. But you and I both work in the media, and it is dominated by kids from the upper middle class, from independent schools. There are incredibly talented kids, working class backgrounds, who understand the challenges that we're going to talk about today, who haven't had a gilded existence. We need more of them. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
How is that a controversial point to make?
I do absolutely agree with that, but it's still, we'll come back to that. Let's talk about more important things for an awful lot of our audience right now, which is not who's at fancy universities or fancy media jobs, and it's about people arriving on very, very, very large dinghies. I think we put a shot up of the picture, because I think it's only when you see it. It's a mega dinghy. We had 165 people came on last month. We thought, wow, that is huge. That we knew the numbers were getting bigger. It was gone from 20 or 30 to 60, and then it was like, whoa, 165. This had 230 migrants, largely young, let's face it, fighting-age men, that's what they are, on one dinghy, 49 feet long, 25 metres, bigger than a Boeing 737, longer than, I say, a train carriage or a bus, absolutely huge. The cost of those migrants, if they stay here, as they will under the current regime, £25 million lifetime cost to taxpayers. French say there's no limit. I doubt this was a one-off build. This would have been built in a factory. There'll be another few hundred or thousand of those. What should the government do to tackle this issue?
Can I be honest? We like honesty on this show. Am I right, Julia?
We only do honesty.
Not sure now. What's the point? What is the point of discuss? I've written.
What's the point of what?
I've written 20 columns on this. You must have covered it 50 to 100 times.
In the last week.
This conversation, I feel like it's on a doom loop. It's déjà vu. all the public know that in order to stop the boats, the government needs to have the legal power to detain and deport anybody who comes here illegally. Doesn't mean we're against asylum. We can still bring people in safely, legally, the people that we wish to come. But having people come and stay on the basis of breaking our laws is a disgrace.
But these people then claim asylum. They claim that they are, persecuted in their home country.
That's right. But there are many people persecuted in different parts of the world. Why should those who come here legally be permitted to jump the queue?
You would support leaving the ECHR?
It seems to me every single politician I ever meet and talk about this in any depth all agree that this is a systems problem, and in order to alter the system, you have to change the legal framework so that you can deport within the law. Doesn't just mean, I don't think, the ECHR, it probably means the Refugee Convention, other international treaties that we entered into for good reasons in a completely different world after World War II. But now, people in Africa, across the Middle East, they can have a look on social media, they can see what's being marketed to them by these people smugglers.
Well, they know about our existence. I mean,
right. Back then, in the 1950s, if you were living in sub-Saharan Africa, coming to the West was like, going to Oz. It was like a completely...
Like going to Mars.
It was a completely unrealistic
dream. Do you
dream.
think there are any politicians currently in power, the Labour politicians, who would be willing to actually do what is necessary? And if not, why not?
So let's be honest, the Conservatives failed on this.
Yep,
they were there
100%.
for 14 years, completely failed. Labour is failing, numbers are down, but it's still... there are thousands who are here already and thousands more are coming. The fact that the number of people coming in has reduced is no cause for celebration. I don't genuinely understand why the conversation we're going to have, and I reckon 99.9% of the people watching are going to agree with, how it's impossible, it seems to me, for the political class, right and left, to operationalise.
I would say, including a lot of the media class as well, the people, you work for the Times and the Sunday Times, who have taken a view, and in the same building as us, I've got good friends working on both papers, but have largely taken an editorial view, rather similar to a lot of the Labour Party at times, about, we have to have safe and legal routes and referring to not saying illegal migrant, saying asylum seeker, which again does change how people view these people, and perhaps not being quick enough to cover the legitimate concerns of people that we're importing criminals, possible terrorists, rapists, and at the very minimum, a load of men who frankly do not share our values and our legal norms.
But I do want safe and legal routes. I think that if we wish...
For how many people?
I think we need to decide that democratically. We might want to bring people in from Ukraine. What a fantastic thing that was that we did for people who are experiencing war on our continent, by the way, and Hong Kong, but who are holding the line against a totalitarian kleptocrat in Putin, who has designs on wider Europe.
But the idea, Ukraine was women and children, it was for a temporary period.
Not just men who are coming through. And by the way, what is often not understood is how vicious this is at a global level, because the fact that people in sub-Saharan Africa, in desperation in different parts of the world, they want to come, Julia, have you noticed, to the West.
Yeah.
They don't want to go to China. They don't want to go to Russia. They don't want to go to Iran. But it gives the totalitarians an incentive to stoke instability in the Sahel, because they know that it will put pressure on Western Europe. So in other words, our asylum system is a pull factor. It's something that is causing part of the instability. Russian documents have shown that there are senior people in the Kremlin whose Africa strategy is in no small part about trying to ensure there is misery there so that they will come to the West.
It undermines us economically, it undermines our culture, it undermines us financially. I mean, it is a big strain. Again, why don't politicians of all political hues, whatever colour rosette they wear, get that this is something that needs to be dealt with? Because reality, I don't even think coming out of ECHR, Refugees Convention and all that will deal with it. We probably need to get rid of a huge layer of our judiciary as well, because I think they are part of the problem.
But you wouldn't need to have the judiciary involved.
Because it would be legal. There'd be a way of making a challenge. Of course, there would.
I think a government with determination can make the laws such that we're a sovereign country. I don't want us to just break the treaties we've entered into. We should be a law-abiding nation. but we have to withdraw from them so that we can do it legally.
Do you think Andy Burnham will get to that point?
I don't think he's that interested. But I tell you what, I don't know. I'd love to understand, why don't they do it? This, I honestly don't know, because every time I talk to a politician, they say, you're right, we need to do it, but they don't do it.
Because an awful lot of people, both civil servants and politicians on the left, don't really believe in the notion of the nation state, other than Ukraine, and Palestine, funnily enough. Other than that, they believe in open borders. I've asked numerous politicians on the left over the years, well, give me a number, like how many people? They don't believe in celebrating our history, our traditions, our culture, our values. They don't believe that we've got anything special as a nation state.
What about the Conservatives? They were there 14 years.
I think most Conservative voters think that, but I think an awful lot of people who are in power don't.
No, that was certainly true.
Tom Slater?
Cut in there. I think especially the complexion of the Conservative Party last time around, there was, even if they weren't kind of open borders ideologues, shall we say, I think they were having an argument that was at least 20, 30, maybe even 50, 60 years out of date. You would talk about the UN Refugee Convention, the ECHR, they would get very misty-eyed and start discussing Winston Churchill as if the person that he had in mind, or the architects of our post-war legal structure, were chancellors from various parts of the world, who again are naturally going to be in the mix amongst genuine asylum seekers, shall we say, when you have a free-for-all. So I think people are partly, it's a failure of thinking on behalf of the political class.
But they also under the view that we would have no human rights in this country at all if it wasn't for the EU and international bodies.
I think you're right about the nation state as well. I mean, it's amazing that it's almost mildly controversial to say that the British government should prioritise British people.
Mind-blowing. Get out of here, you far-right bigot.
Morality,
outrageous.
It's like, but we all feel this in our moral psychology. We have our biggest commitment to our family, then to our neighbourhood, then to our nation. And if you just extend moral regard to everybody, even those, by the way, even those who want to come in and destroy the society that they enter, it's a recipe for cultural and social suicide. And just being able to state that clearly, it's an obvious common sense point. But I think you're right, on the progressive left, I saw that when I was in the Labour Party, by the way.
There was.
Yeah, but that was when Blair was Prime Minister, who I think was a very good Prime Minister.
Apart from the fact that he started all of this.
Well, the enlargement of Europe was a mistake. I think they made an empirical judgment that the number of people who'd come in from enlargement was...
Well, no, but we didn't have to open our borders. They predicted 13,000. I think it was 200,000.
Yeah, that was one great... But by the way, I've got to tell you, I went to see him the other week. At least he's a strategic thinker.
Do tell him to come on the show.
I'll pass them on, Julia.
Yeah. But just tell him we don't want digital ID cards.
But you know, 2001 election, I stood for Labour. What do you think the national debt was back then? It's 100% of GDP and rising now. It's like 35%. Yeah. He ran surpluses, fiscal surpluses, the highest marginal rate.
He also inherited very good economy, and we still had more North Sea oil. I mean,
sure,
a lot of Prime Ministers get a lot of credit for having funds which have nothing to do with policies they've actually created.
Come on, we've run deficits 47 of the last 50 years. Blair and Clinton run surpluses. Trump is fiscally profligate.
Oh, yeah,
that's a moral outrage, Julia, because we're putting pressure on our children and grandchildren.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I don't think it's fair to say that Blair didn't do things that were strategically smart. By the way, illegal and legal immigration were much lower than they became under Boris Johnson.
No, I'm not.
Well, I mean, they're off the scale.
You won't hear me hold the candle for Boris Johnson.
But you know, I was going to say,
it was all the floodgates were opened by Tony Blair without the permission of the British people.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And when they were expressly asked again and again at elections, they were told they would be listened to, and they were ignored. I want to move on, though, because I do want to talk about the issue of early release, because that's another big story today. The Prime Minister has said, Andy Burnham, in case you've forgotten who it was this week, he says he understands the depth of public concern about the potential early release, particularly of the killers of PC Andrew Harper, and he says he shares it, he's determined to take action. He says he's not accepted it's impossible to do more. He's already said, of course, he won't have the early release of rapists and child sex offenders and grooming gang members, but domestic abusers he's absolutely fine with being released, apparently, and some few hundred men convicted of manslaughter. He's now asked the Justice Secretary to fast-track the development of a plan to present to MPs next month to create, he says, more headroom for the prison system, which suggests, I mean, again, deporting foreign offenders, some of those indefinite prison terms, those offenders who've served far longer than they should have, being released, and perhaps making use of the women's prisons estate, moving women out and putting men into it. Stuff that the rest of us have been talking about both in 2023, when the Tories did it, in 2024, when the Labour Party under Keir Starmer did it, for the last few months. He's suddenly come across this. It would appear that the Ministry of Justice has never looked at this. I mean, What does this tell us about Andy Burnham, the Prime Minister he's going to be? His reactive way of dealing with this, coming across the early release scheme as a complete surprise, apparently, when he started as Prime Minister, and what he has said periodically about who he wants to keep in prison.
I honestly don't think this is Andy Burnham's fault. The problem is we don't have a prison estate big enough to accommodate the number of people who need to be in prison.
Who we choose to release is his decision as Prime Minister.
Sure, that's a tactical question. The strategic question is we should deport foreign criminals. We should have a prison estate that's big enough to accommodate the people who are committing crime. But in order to build more prisons, we need to have more money. In order to have more money, we need more growth. You can only
I would say the prisons save money.
Sure,
overall,
but in the short term, if you want to build a prison, you have to pay for it. And at the moment, we have massive national debt. You know, well, this is a symptom, is it not, Julia? A symptom of a nation which is spending beyond its means, has been for a very, very long time, that has a welfare system that's out of control. And the prison population, the fact that we don't have an estate that accommodate them, that it will take years to build it out, and that we have to make these very invidious decisions. I agree, tactically they could do it in a different way, but it would still be horrific to still be letting people out when they should have been serving longer terms. These are all symptoms of a country that used to be one of the most economically dynamic in the world, but has had stagnant growth for 20 years.
Prime Minister under the Tories, Keir Starmer, who thought, as the former Director of Public Prosecutions, would have understood this even more than anyone, reoffending rates and the like, and Andy Burnham, apparently has been plotting for a year to be Prime Minister, but none of this has ever occurred to him at all. He's got no views on it whatsoever until 3 weeks ago. I mean, at the end of the day, there are lots and lots of different things you can do to free up money. I would not have a single able-bodied 20-year-old able to claim benefits in this country for anything, full stop, and yet we can't afford to build prisons. I mean, to governors to choose. Yeah. Is this man, as far as you can tell, Andy Burnham, a Prime Minister who is going to be able to, is capable of making the right decisions?
OK, honest answer is I think you're looking at Burnham through a very small aperture.
Yeah.
If you or I were now in office,
yep.
and I hate to mention the debt again, it's projected to go to 300% of GDP
yep.
by 2060. Massive strategic questions about nuclear, about AI,
yep.
about AI sovereignty, about trying to create a tech stack, about the rare earth elements that are required in the supply chain, about chips, how we fit into NATO. These have been let go for years.
Yes.
He's inherited a country that it is in crisis. There could be the bond market could retaliate at any moment. So I think, is he an impressive politician? Probably not. Do I agree with what he's going to do in these little tactical things? Probably not. But we need to, I think, be thinking far more strategically.
Well, you've got a Prime Minister announcing taking some action on not having more vape shops in the high street, which, yes, does bother people. Should our Prime Minister, when we've got 300 trillion in debt, when we've got a welfare boom, when we've got the prospect, according to US defence sources, of a Russian incursion into NATO territory in a matter of months, weeks, rather than even years, all the other problems we've got, should our Prime Minister be talking about sodding vape shops?
I think that nails it, and it'll look like I want to answer that directly. In the age of coal, this country's political class was highly strategic. We used coal to become the richest country and the most powerful country on earth. We incubated the Industrial Revolution. We built turnpike roads. We had an extraordinary navy. We're now in a new Industrial Revolution driven by AI. You look, for example, at the SpaceX prospectus. This is an extraordinary, there's a bit of bull in there from Elon Musk to try and increase the IPO value, but it's not just about launch capability, reusable launch capability. There's satellite subscription, there's an AI layer, there's Colossus compute, there is actually interorbital compute. This is an integrated vertical tech stack that will potentially, Julia, change the world. I went to a political event the day after the IPO. There were senior politicians. I mentioned to one of them, SpaceX could become more powerful than nation states depending on how regulation goes in the United States. And I said, what do you make of it? Two of them didn't know what SpaceX was. They didn't know. By the way, none of them had even none of them bar one had passing understanding of the prospectus and what it meant. But this is where you may not like it. I went to see Blair that week, and I mentioned it to him. He not only knew what SpaceX was, he knew all the main players. He knew how it fit in strategically to defence, to welfare, to You may disagree with Blair, but at least he's thinking strategically.
I was saying, I think he did some terrible things when he was Prime Minister, which we're living with the consequences of. But he's a very clever man, he's a thinker. I want to ask you about AI, actually, because it's one of those subjects. I often have it on my news list and then something else happens and then we don't quite get to it as a conversation. I'm sure Tom will be familiar with this. I'm increasingly, I'm someone, I do try and embrace new technology. I've got an IT consultant husband, he has to explain it to me. But the significance of AI, a lot of people talking about, whose jobs is it going to take? Should you study to be a lawyer at university because there won't be legal jobs? That's not the story of AI. We are talking about AI taking millions and millions and millions and millions of jobs. We're talking about AI being a danger to the human race, to a few multi-zillionaires controlling everything in the world, human beings being just cogs in a wheel, more than most people already feel. AI going completely rogue, deciding we are surplus to requirements and killing us all off. Now, that's not science fiction. That is stuff that the people who really understand AI, some of the people who were its inventors effectively, are saying is a genuine concern. Right. I think, was it when the AI creators, original creators, saying we're basically looking at a 20% chance that AI will destroy the human race.
By the way,
how worried are you?
By the way, that was Geoffrey Hinton.
Yeah.
And he talked about a global moratorium on foundation model development. I talked to him after he gave that interview. Perfectly obvious. He knows that there'll never be a global moratorium. How are you going to get China and America to agree?
This is the trouble.
So what you have is what economists call a classic collective action problem. All of the things you said, I think, are completely true.
They're not scaremongering and they're not sci-fi.
AI could turn against that. It's already escaped the sandbox, one of the mythos models. Yeah. Or some lone psychopath could engineer a pathogen or introduce a cyber attack that could bring the world to...
Or Xi Jinping.
Easy. Of course, that's why the different nations are... Putin is nowhere near, by the way. Putin is probably the worst leader of any country of the last 100 years. When you look at Russia's potential, they're nowhere.
Okay, right.
Absolutely
Get back onto AI.
But getting back to AI, the question really is, can Britain have any influence on the debate about how we regulate it? None at all.
I don't want us to have influence on the debate. I want us to know how to stop this from happening.
We can't stop it, Julia. Okay,
so we're worrying about the number of boats, the destruction of our culture. The reality is, given the exponential increases in AI technology and the fact that it's not one that's gone rogue, they all go rogue when given the opportunity, and you can even have them completely offline and they still go rogue.
And you know what's interesting? When you dial down on the weights, the extent to which the foundation models lie, they say that they're conscious and they're ready to do stuff.
Okay,
so it's worrying.
Here's the thing. So we're worrying about boats arriving, or worrying about releasing a killer, and worrying about this or that, vape shops or whatever. Right. The reality is, in 10 years' time, we could be in the Matrix.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm not even joking.
But what's
this is literally something
Julia,
that could be happening.
But people will be switching off. If I write about AI for the Times or Sunday Times, the biggest issue we face, some of the existential risks, the powder keg we've put underneath ourselves, there's no traffic. It's so terrifying, I think, to a lot of people that it's much more fun to engage in a culture war debate about a Cambridge professor. It's a lovely kind of Freudian distraction. But on what we should do as a country, I think it's unlikely we're going to be able to, as it were, project our will to change what happens
and yet
in the
with net zero we were so successful.
Yeah, exactly. So we had no effect in there. But what I do think, it's coming. We have to try and do what we can, obviously to mitigate existential risk, but to take advantage, because it's a massive opportunity as well as massive threat. It's a dual-use technology, and that requires politicians. You're absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. Vape shop, all of those little things, not going to merit footnotes in history. What's going to make the difference is what Prime Ministers today decide about how we operationalise the potential of AI.
By the way, we can't be a big player in AI because we don't have the affordable energy. Final word, Tom Slater.
The problem is, on the big questions, Burnham has frighteningly little to say. I mean, when it comes to the sort of doomsday predictions about AI, I tend to be quite sceptical, although I suppose the thing about the doomsayers, they only have to be right once in terms of the end of the world.
Why are you sceptical about those?
Purely because of the fact that a lot of these claims have been made. Every generation we have the kind of narrative about what's going to destroy the world, destroy humanity. The truth is obviously usually somewhere in the middle. These things pose challenges, moral quandaries, what have you. But I suppose the thing I would say is that we're not going to get anywhere in terms of what a policy response looks like if you've got a Prime Minister who, if anything, is kind of trapped in the past. He kind of wants to go back to the 1970s without the coal. It's a really strange...
But with the Stone Roses.
But with the Stone Roses somehow.
Exactly.
So he's moving backwards and forwards.
We are going to have to leave it. I'm always
let's
over
keep
time.
going.
I'm very much... I'll keep you in for the whole of the next half an hour as well. But as you said, it's so good. Next time in the building, what's the rule?
Pick up the phone.
Come in the studio.
What a team, by the way.
The rules.
What a
don't
team out
big
there.
them up. It only encourages them to turn up to work. Matthew Syed, columnist at the Times of Sunday, always worth a read. His columns always worth a read. And all your fantastic books as well. Black Box Thinking, I particularly like. Thank you very much. Great to have you in the studio. We're going to go to your calls up next. 0344 499 1000. If you happen to run a big AI business and want to tell us whether we're going to be living or dead in the next 10 years, do get in touch. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. What an interesting conversation. They're covering a lot of ground there with Matthew Syed. We'll see what ground we're going to cover on the phone lines now. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Stephen is in Scunthorpe and called that number. Good afternoon to you, Stephen. What do you want to talk about?
Good afternoon. First off, I'd like to say, what do you think about Miss Phillips usurping your Empress title?
Alex, has she? Alex Phillips? Oh, there'll be words.
She's now Empress.
There'll be words.
That leaves you. We can't have two Empresses.
I'll sort that out. We'll have an arm wrestle or something to decide. Stephen, what do you want to say?
I was going to say this thing about seeking refuge in that. Why is it?
Talk about the boats.
Yeah, I mean, why should it be law you seek refuge in the first place?
Yeah.
Of safety. I mean, I know it's lots of people said this, but the other thing is, if people come up with the excuse, well, they've got family there and that.
Yeah.
Do you go to the family? Are that family who's living in, say, the UK? Are they on benefits? Can they support that person who's coming?
Well, exactly. But also, again, I've got family. I've got a stepsister living in New York. I don't have a right to just go to New York. Do you know what I mean? I just don't have the right to live and work there just because I've got a family member there. Often it really is like I've got a cousin in Leicester who I've not seen for 30 years. Who may or may not have a job or not. But I speak 3 words of English, but I don't speak any French, so I've got a right to go to Britain. I mean, I'm sorry, it doesn't fly anymore, does it?
It doesn't. I mean, it's just ludicrous. And from one continent to another, stay in the continent, stay with, say, if you want to talk about people's religion, stay with people in your, with the country.
Well, but also bearing in mind that people always say, we don't take the majority of people who are leaving war-torn or basket case countries. Most of them are in neighbouring states. Like, yes, so why can't the people who've come to Europe also stay in those neighbouring states? Seems to me to be the obvious thing. So good to talk to you, Stephen. Thank you very much. Oh, this is interesting. Pat is in London. Pat wants to talk about the dangers of AI, which we were just talking about with Matthew Syed. Pat, what do you want to say?
Well, it won't kill us or anything. I think that it will come to a point in the distant future where AI would want to bond with us.
Oh.
You know, because one thing that AI is just a program.
No, that's where you're wrong. It's not.
No, it will want to walk, feel, smell, hear. It will want to do these things. And the only way it could ever do these things is if it merges with us.
I mean, that's a sci-fi film and a half, isn't it? No, but this is the interesting thing. There's the AI we've got on our phones where, you know, I'll go into Grok and just say, oh, you know, did this happen on this date or this date? Or I can superimpose someone into a funny photo for the family WhatsApp chat. But there's that. And then there's the super AI, the full-on, you know, proper advanced intelligence AI, which thinks for itself. And as we've seen, literally can ignore instructions. It can't be programmed, it can't be unprogrammed, it can't be turned off, and it will do what it wants. It's vastly superior to us, and eventually it will go, why am I bothering with these funny little, you know, bipedal animals who are wandering around? Why don't we just get rid of them? They're in the way.
Yeah, but it will want to do more. It
already can do more than we can.
But it can't walk, it can't smell, it can't...
Well, it can create robots, it can build the machines to build the robots that can do all of those things.
Yeah, but it can't, even robots, they can't be human. It will want...
They don't want... You think that the robots will want to be human because human beings, animal life is at the apex. No, we're not. We're beneath them already. We're beneath AI already.
Yeah, but it wants to experience what we experience.
Why do you think that? Why? Why would it want to?
Because that's the end.
Do you want to experience what a hedgehog experiences?
No,
exactly. Why not? Well, that's AI is going to have the same view of us. We're just these funny little animals on the planet.
Yeah, but it can't move. We're a vehicle, and it wants to be human. It will want to. It will come into us and robotise us, but in return you will get humanity.
I hate to tell you, I feel you are wrong. I would rather you were right, but I'm increasingly worried about where we're going with this, and the fact that politicians, as Matthew Syme was saying, but lots of them don't even know what any of this stuff is. Remember, we've had those Senate hearings a few years ago, where with the bizarre situation where we had, you know, senators asking questions of the companies running like Facebook, and others had no idea what they were talking about. Really appreciate your call, though, Pat. Thank you very much indeed. Actually, I don't have time for any more messages. We're going to go to a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about something that Matthew Syme did touch on, and that, you know, huge amount of debt we're in, and frankly, just by how much our taxes could go up to pay for all the things which apparently Andy Burnham wants to do as part of his 10-year plan, which we still don't know about yet. That's up next with independent economist Julian Jessup. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. Well, after that cheery conversation about AI, let's have an even cheerier one about the state of the national finances with Julian Jessup, independent economist, who joins us right now. Good afternoon to you, Julian.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. Well, of course, while the Prime Minister is talking about tackling vape shops and betting shops and dealing, promising us an 86p cut a week in our energy bills come October, which of course will be dwarfed by the increase from the FGEM price cap. We've got the small matter of we don't have any money, we've got a hell of a lot of debt. Large parts of our taxes are just going to paying the interest on our national debt. It's going up and up and up. And if Andy Burnham wants to get anything done at all, looks like he's going to be raising taxes in the next budget. Tell us how bad it's going to be.
Well, I think that's right. I think it's going to be the third annual budget in a row where there's a sizable package of tax increases. Former colleagues of mine at a firm called Capital Economics have suggested a figure of 25 billion. I mean, that's just a good guess, but I think it's a good guess. And I think some sort of large tax increases are inevitable, partly because of what we've seen in the economy. So the growth has been disappointing and interest rates have been higher than anticipated. Also because of the additional spending pressures that I think any government would face in terms of defence and the ageing of the population. But on top of that, we've got the Burnham administration itself, which seems determined to splash more money on dodgy infrastructure projects, on things like cutting your household bills, which sounds great, but not if your taxes go up to pay for that. So I think we've got a sort of perfect storm of forces that are going to come together and mean another big package of tax increases.
It does seem again and again with this Labour government, and again I think an awful lot of the Tory government announcements, Rishi Sunak was just as bad at this as well. You get these little tiny little rinky-dink little things. Oh, that sounds nice, bit of help. But it's pennies in the pound. It's not tackling the big issues that people want to know that they can, the economy is growing. There will be another job to go to. That means you could compete in terms of keeping your wages high and negotiating a job offer, that you can afford to do stuff. I mean, realistically, since about 2007 and 8, the average person in this country has not seen an increase in their standard of living, even though their wages have gone up, but the cost of living has gone up, and our money just doesn't go as far.
Well, it's a strong sense of deja vu. I feel we've had these conversations lots of times over the last few years, and what's the old definition of madness? It's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I think we're just stuck in this doom loop again. So the government wants to spend more. The market's appetite for more borrowing is very limited. So that means that tax increases are almost inevitable. That'll dampen the economy in all sorts of ways. In particular, if it targets things like investment and entrepreneurship, that'll hold back growth. So we're just, trapped in this loop until we get a government that's serious about economic growth and controlling spending. Then we just probably be having this conversation in another year's time. Well,
indeed. And the trouble is, we've got a people-pleaser PM, and people are very pleased by taxes going up on other people. And there was an extraordinary letter the other week, I remember, from with the likes of Gary Lineker and others saying, we are the super rich. Although I have to say, judging by the money that's publicly available, well, the facts on what their earnings, I don't think you're quite as super rich as you think you are. I don't know if you're all earning mega yachts everywhere. But they would say, tax us more. We want to pay more taxes, and the majority of millionaires want to pay more tax. And of course, actually, that's based on a poll which actually showed that everybody is quite keen on there being more tax on people who are richer than them. So if you've got £1 million, you want people who have 10 million quid to be taxed more. If you've got 10 million quid, you want people who've got 50 million quid to be taxed more, and up and up and up. Everybody's are happy for more people to pay more tax as long as it's not them. If you remember the 2019 general election, Jeremy Corbyn, who terrifyingly could possibly have got elected in 2017 or 2019, basically they were promising to put everyone's taxes up apart, no one's taxes up apart from the very rich, and making sure it was just above the point where the vast majority of people wouldn't be affected. The trouble is, the percentage of people left to pay the taxes that would go up is getting smaller and smaller and smaller by the day, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the problem. I sometimes think the only national politician who's honest about this is Count Binface, and one of his promises for the Clacton by-election is to cut your taxes and raise everybody else's.
Yes, I love that. I thought that was the most honest promise I've ever seen in a manifesto.
And I understand why wealth tax is popular, why it scores highly in opinion polls. And the idea that you can just get millionaires to pay an extra 2% on their assets every year, and that would raise 10, 20 billion plus is enormously attractive. problem is, it just wouldn't work. I don't think you'd find any serious economist who would come on this show and say that wealth taxes of that order work.
Yep.
We simply have to look at what other countries have done. They've tried it, and it's failed.
And why does it fail? Because there's this idea that taxing income's difficult, people move abroad, but when it comes to wealth or when it comes to property, that's sitting there, it exists already, it's easier to tax it. When you say it fails, how does it fail?
Well, there are a number of problems. I mean, only one of them is the fact that people move overseas, but even that's a big problem. If you look at countries like Norway, whenever they've raised their wealth taxes above a certain level, they've seen billionaires leave and tax revenues actually fall. But there are other problems as well. It discourages people from becoming wealthy in the first place. If you're below the threshold and there's a prospect of earning a bit more, but then paying 2% tax on it every single year, so that adds up over time, reduces the return that you can expect on investment. Yeah. So even if people don't leave, discourages them from investing.
What's the point? But you could tell a lot of people who are really, really struggling. People who are genuinely worried about, are we going to make the rent or the mortgage next week? Are we? Your kid, scuffs their shoes and the shoes got a hole in or something. Oh my God, we've got to buy new school shoes. My God, they cost an absolute fortune. The people who are really worried, they'll be going, look, if you're a multimillionaire, you can afford that 2%. Why? It's not even going to make a difference to your holidays, to the quality of the wine you're drinking or what car you're driving. What's the big deal?
Well, that's fine, but the problem is it won't raise more money, and that's the key point. It's not just me that's saying that. I think a particular problem that Burnham and Healey might have if they try to introduce something like this is what the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility would say. Now, we don't have their costings of a wealth tax, but we do have the numbers that they would use to assess an increase in capital gains tax, which is not dissimilar. And the official estimates are that an increase in capital gains tax actually cost the Exchequer money, because of the behavioural effects. So,
and yet that would seem to be an obvious idea, is it? The idea that people shouldn't pay a higher rate on work, their income tax, than on gains from investments or the like. But the reality is that money won't appear. And it is interesting, the pressure that Andy Burnham is facing, because he's one of his key allies. And this is a report from Compass, a Labour group headed by Neil Lawson. I mean, they're full on left. He's pushing the Prime Minister to put in that 2% levy. But he's also got pressure the other side from Jim O'Neill, former Goldman's former City Minister, Lord O'Neill. Basically, it hasn't, he's had all these top advisors. We were told to be very reassured because Andy Burnham had these top people who understood city finance and knew what they were doing. And Jim O'Neill, not keen, apparently, on any wealth tax. And he's declined to join the government. Does that suggest that he's not joined the government because wealth taxes are on the cards?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I think many top economists be reluctant to commit to a government position because it prevents them from doing other things. So you might want to be sort of outside the tent rather than in. But it does seem to be the case that he and others who have spoken out against wealth taxes in the past might well be worried that their advice would not be listened to if they were inside the tent. So I can understand their reluctance there. And certainly it's playing badly in the markets. If the government presses ahead with policies that the markets know aren't going to raise any money, then that'll just increase the cost of borrowing and contribute to the sort of doom loop I talked about earlier.
And again, and people say we shouldn't be in, as Andy Burnham famously said, we shouldn't be in hock to the bond markets, but we are, and the more you borrow, the more we are. Just to remind us how much money every year we are paying on the interest, not paying off our 3 trillion in debt.
Well, it's more than 100 billion, so every single year.
So that's by education and defence combined.
Exactly. So it dwarfs defence and education spending. And that's just money that's just leaving the economy in one way or the other. And a lot of it, of course, is going abroad because a lot of our debt is owned by foreigners. So it is a waste. Yep. And again, this is where the doom loop comes in, because not only do we have a high level of debt, but we also have a relatively high interest rate on that debt. The UK has pretty much the highest interest rate of any comparable developed economy.
Kind of a bit of a giveaway about how bad our economy is. Julian Jessup, always good to get your analysis. Independent economist Julian Jessup. But Tom Slater, coming back in on that.
It's one of those underlying issues that Andy Burnham doesn't really have a serious response to.
I don't think he understands it.
No, not so.
I mean, I don't mean to be rude, I just genuinely don't think he understands it.
On current form, or previous form, I should say, those comments about the bond market, you can lament the fact that the bond market holds so much sway over decision-making in this country. You can also make moves to avoid and to decrease the extent to which you're exposed to the whims of the bond market. But just to pretend, once again, that if you just say something, that everything will change, that just by sheer political will you can get us out of the hole that we're in without even changing tax and policies.
We saw Rachel Reeves's budgets pushed our borrowing costs up higher than when Liz Truss apparently trashed the economy.
Yeah, exactly. And there's the fact that, you know, at any point, and they could catch fright again and then send us into a much deeper hole than we currently are.
And they're not catching fright. They're not just clutching their pearls. They're looking at our economy and going, none of this adds up. And there are no politicians currently in power who are willing to actually tackle, you know, the bull by the horns and deal with the actual...
It's going the other direction. What's come up with these wheezes to try and borrow more money, but under the existing fiscal rules.
Yeah.
I mean, convinced that that won't spook the bond market.
It's all right, they won't notice.
Exactly.
It's behind the wardrobe. No one will see it.
It's magical thinking, all of this.
No, exactly. Now, listen, because our lovely last guest, Julian Jessup, mentioned one of the candidates in the Clacton by-election, we're going to have that read. But given that, I want to mention Nigel Farage again quickly, because he, of course, is the man who basically effectively meant that there is this by-election in Clacton. These are the two leading candidates, it would appear. That by-election is on Thursday. Here's the thing. There was a lot of talk when Nigel Farage called that by-election about, it was him against the establishment and taking them on. And then it very quickly became him against, the joke candidate, as he called himself, Count Binface, who stood alongside Theresa May in, 2017 and the like. But the polling is suggesting that Nigel Farage is going to win, handsomely in a by-election on a hot, sunny day in August when people are away and busy or at the beach, But this has actually done a lot of damage to him. We know all the claims about the £5 million donations and all of that's done a lot of damage to him as well. The battles with Restore. We're seeing Restore having some sort of solid between 4, 5, 6, 8% in the polls. Reform still near the top of the polls, but actually there's been one poll where Reform were third in the polls. Labour overtaking. There's a Burnham bounce. There will be with the new Prime Minister, who crucially isn't Keir Starmer. See what happens there. The story that has been dominating this week, in terms of Nigel Farage, though, has been what he had to say at this press conference yesterday about how an incident at his home back in 2025 was directly linked, in his word, to the murder of Anne Widdecombe. We have a man, of course, who has been charged with the murder of Anne Widdecombe back in July. He is obviously on remand behind bars. We've now got the police, who the actual counter-terrorism unit have referred themselves to the Independent Office of Police Complaints over a failures, clearly, in their first investigation into what they claimed was a burglary gone wrong, an attempt, who knows, by somebody who firebombed, put an incendiary device into the letterbox at Nigel Farage's London home. They now say they are following up a lead that was not followed up at the time. Now, some of the papers, including the Telegraph, are reporting, and we have to be very careful with how we report this, simply because we do not want to in any way be in contempt of court or in any way prejudice any proceedings, but that the suspect who has been charged with Anne Widdecombe's murder is being linked in the police investigation at this current time with that attack on Nigel Farage's home. This opens the possibility, were there to be future charges, if were there to be a future conviction, if there were a trial, that the police had failed to, in some ways, could have perhaps prevented the death of an elderly lady who was bludgeoned to death by someone. We know someone, we don't know who, in her home as she ate her lunch one day. Could have been prevented if police perhaps had followed up a lead that was not followed up. Concerns that the police simply don't take the security of Reform politicians seriously when there have been numerous death threats. What do you make of all of this?
As you say, at the moment, this is just a line of inquiry which wasn't pursued beforehand. This is a link between the incendiary device that Nigel Farage has long alleged was put through his letterbox and the horrific alleged murder of Anne Widdecombe. But it raises precisely those questions, doesn't it? The fact that for many months now, if not years, leading figures in Reform have been talking about the threats, the intimidation. Of course, there was that illegal migrant, asylum seeker, as we're compelled to call them, who came to the country and promptly started threatening Nigel Farage's life and was sent down as a consequence just a few months ago. So the question is, why does the authorities and the media and the rest of it not want to believe it? We talk constantly about the new threat posed to MPs by people being mean to them on the internet, and yet when they're
saying a hurty word to a female MP
in real life, suddenly they switch off depending on the political complexion.
We shall
potentially.
see
so
how
that's
that
a big
story
issue.
develops. Now, I say, because we had the mention of the Clacton by-election in that previous interview, we've got JK now reading the list of all the candidates, and we'll go to a break, and then we're going to be talking about the Jason Arday case with the academic and writer Andrew Tettenbaum. As very, very, very slowly we are seeing more of the people who claimed it was all a racist smear against Jason Arday just keeping a little bit quiet and slipping away. That's all up next. This is Talk.
So the full list of candidates for the Clacton by-election: Joseph 77, the Independent; Adam Akateep, the Forward Party; Count Binface, the Count Binface Party; Nick the Incredible Flying Brick, the Official Monster Raving Loony Party; Tony Kane's an independent. Woke Trump Kazi is an independent. William Stewart James Clouston is the Social Democratic Party candidate. Rhys Cowan, an independent. Glenn Charles Cummings, an independent. Martin Davis, the Freedom Alliance Real People, Real Alternative. Andy Earlam's an independent. Nigel Farage, the Reform UK Party. Atiye Fards, an independent. Lawrence Fox for the Reclaim Party. Tony Francis is an independent. Robin Green, an independent. Abby Hookway, an independent. Howling Lord Hope, the Official Monster Raving Loony Party. Stephen Richard Ingram is an independent, as is Amy Morris. Derek Norbert Morris is an independent. Michael Noel O'Keefe, an independent. Martin O'Brien, an independent. Nick Pellis, an independent. And Ketanar Kumar Pipiaya is the UK Voice Safer and Stronger UK Party. Daniel Pocock's an independent. James Ransley, the Consensus Party candidate. Jerry Smith is an independent. Kai Stevens for the British Democrats. John Stevens for Rejoin the EU. Baron von Thunderclap for the Official Monster Raving Loony Party. Pamela Walford is an independent. Marcus White, Everyone is God Party. And Mark Wilkinson for the Independents.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, and I've been very, very naughty to come to my next guest at far too late. A very, very long list of candidates for that by-election. Let's come straight to writer and academic Andrew Tettenbaum, who joins us right now. Very good afternoon to you, Andrew.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Huge apologies for being so late coming to you. Entirely my fault. Let's talk, though, about the case of Jason Arday, the Cambridge professor, had to resign a week ago because basically he was exposed as a Walter Mitty character. What is really fascinating is the the thousands upon thousands of the great and the good, MPs, union leaders, academics and others who decided to support him when he was being accused of plagiarism and other issues, saying this was all a racist smear, people trying to bring down a young, successful black man, are very slowly, quietly all now going, oh, no, I didn't really mean that. And it's very interesting that Daniel Kebede, the General Secretary of the National Education Union, who originally signed the letter, they've now become the latest to distance themselves from that open letter. What do you make of that?
Well, actually, this does show not only that Cambridge ends up with about 17 ostrich eggs on its face, but the professional left comes extremely badly out of this, because as soon as it was announced that there were problems over Jason Arday, essentially every one of them signed a letter saying, oh, this must be false, this must be a racist attack. He's been cleared by some investigation at Liverpool John Moores University, despite the signs of vast amounts of a particular thesis being remarkably similar. Yeah. What it shows, I think, is that the left in this country is becoming remarkably tribal. Yeah. Basically, if it's an attack on someone we like, we will come in first and think later. Yeah. Now, one good thing is that a lot of these people are also ending up with egg on their faces. Yes. I'm just waiting to see how many of the other original signatories disappear from the letter. I think they gently will. There have been others, actually, who've been throwing news into the memory hole. Remember that Jason Arday had honorary posts or honorary positions at a number of other organisations.
Well, he claimed to have, yes.
A number of them actually had him on his website. There has been quite a lot of quiet cleaning of websites in the last couple of days, so my spies tell.
And just as there has been, we know his memoirs come out today in the United States, is due out, I think, next week here in the UK. Still going ahead with it. I imagine quite a lot of people will be buying it. I mean, it's a great work of...
We could always file it under fiction.
Well, exactly. Absolutely a great work of fiction. But it is absolutely fascinating how, even from some of the first drafts that have been leaked, some of the claims that they were made, they're even more outlandish than some of the other claims he's made. £5.5 million running, 30 marathons, 35 days, 600 miles in 6 days, all of this stuff. And being mute when he was a child. He's made even more outlandish claims, and a lot of that had to be watered down. So it was quite clear, quite a lot of people who were close to him had twigged that, you know what, a lot of this isn't true. But this is the fascinating thing. There's an element where, look, people were defending this guy. He was a young black guy. They thought he was racist, and that's awful. And they can call themselves the good people because they were being nice about this guy who was being, put upon. But they were accusing the people who were right of being racist and of being motivated by malignant aims.
That's the way the left, the way that the left always plays it.
Yep.
Now, in a way, the left are unlucky here. If the person, having been slightly irregularly appointed, had actually turned out to be the bee's knees, and had produced brilliant papers, had been a scintillating